Chapter 35:10. If Hong Yu was just a small employee in the past, then now Hong Yu had become the chairman's secretary, taking care of the chairman's daily life. Please look at the most complete. She was a servant. It was not on the same level as serving Wanxin. Lord Zhou was easy to serve. As long as she did what he told her to do, there was nothing else. Usually, she had a lot of free time. Sometimes, Lord Zhou would have some small trinkets outside and throw the worthless things to her. Even if it was a candy, it would be sweet to eat. Wanxin did not receive such treatment at all. She had to listen to Wanxin's melancholy. Now that the three young masters were not by her side, if she went back, Wanxin's daily topic would probably be where the three young masters were. Did they eat well and sleep well? Then, as she chatted, the atmosphere would fall into a kind of sadness that could not be controlled, as if the sky had fallen. Hong Yu had served Wanxin for a long time and understood what kind of person Wanxin was. The life of a young miss, she did not have to worry about food and drink. But the maids were different. They only thought about how to survive and live a better life. Hong Yu felt that if she did not completely refuse, Miss Wanxin would come to her again in the future, so she said, "Miss Wanxin, I'm willing to serve Lord. Don't you already have a maid by your side? It's not good for me to go. Even Madam doesn't have two maids by her side. It's not appropriate for me to go back." Wanxin immediately said, "It's okay. As long as you go back, Fat Lass will leave." Hong Yu was speechless. It was really difficult to communicate. Didn't she already refuse very clearly? Hong Yu felt that she should be more direct. "Miss, I can't go back, and I don't want to go back. Miss, don't come to me in the future. I'm going to prepare things for Lord." Hong Yu turned and left. Looking at her back, she seemed to be fleeing in a panic. Wanxin was stunned. Crystal clear tears welled up in her eyes. She wiped them with a handkerchief and returned to her room weakly. Seeing Fat Lass sitting on the steps and eating melon seeds, Wanxin's heart suddenly surged with an indescribable despair. This despair tightly wrapped around her. It was uncomfortable and oppressive. Fat Lass immediately stood up. Seeing Wanxin's pale face, she quickly asked, "Miss, are you okay?" Wan Xian waved Fat Lass's hand away. "I'm fine. Don't disturb me." When Wanxin returned to her room, she picked up her embroidery and continued to embroider. As she embroidered, she cried. Fat Lass saw Wanxin like this through the crack in the door and was very puzzled. How could she spoil herself like this? Miss Wanxin had not eaten for 2 meals. Could her small body do it? She would miss it if she missed a meal. Immediately after, a hoarse scream came from the room. Fat Lass was shocked. She peeked through the crack in the door and saw Miss Wanxin throwing everything to the ground and even stomping on it. Her expression was a little ferocious and a little scary. She looked very desperate. In the end, she squatted on the ground, buried her face between her legs, and began to cry. Fat Lass was speechless. Is Miss Wanxin crazy? Should he tell Madam about it? Fat Lass ran over and told Ning Shu about Wanxin's situation. She already knew about Wanxin's situation. Her every move was under her nose. It was normal for Wanxin to break down. Without 3 men who loved and protected her by her side, the world had become much more difficult. No one cared about her when she was wronged, and she had to work hard to embroider. Because of her self-esteem, she did not even want to be paid. Also, because of her self-esteem, she could not say that she did not want to do it. Wanxin kept saying that the Zhou family had done her a great favor. If she refused to work, she would definitely be called ungrateful. Therefore, Wanxin had to do it for her reputation. But she really had no motivation, no money, and no people. The servant girl who had been by her side for so many years was not willing to follow her. She was afraid that she would suffer with her. Under so much psychological pressure, it was not strange for Wanxin to act like this. Ning Shu just went back to let Fat Lass take good care of Wanxin. Fat Lass hesitated for a moment and said to Ning Shu, "Madam, do you want to stop letting Miss Wanxin embroider? Look at her." Although Fat Lass did not get along very well with Wanxin, she still unintentionally said what Wanxin wanted to say the most. Ning Shu looked at Fat Lass with pitying kindness and said, "You also know that the 3 young masters have run away from home. Wanxin must feel that this is her fault. It's easy for people to think too much when they have nothing to do. It's easy. I'm asking her to do something so that she won't think too much. It's not important whether she does more or less. The key is that she has something to do." Fat Lass suddenly understood. She looked at Ning Shu with stars in her eyes. "Madam, you're so good to Miss Wanxin." Ning Shu nodded shamelessly. "Of course. I've always treated Miss Wanxin as my own daughter. She came to the Zhou family at such a young age. Of course, I'll favor her more." Fat Lass nodded repeatedly. When she went back, she picked up all the things on the ground for Wanxin and patted away all the dust. Fat Lass said to Wanxin, "Miss, if you're sad, embroider more." She would not think too much when she was doing things. Wanxin was speechless. "Are you here to supervise my work? Are you madam? Are you the mistress of the house?" Wanxin held her anger in her heart and was about to explode. She disliked Fat Lass even more. Fat Lass was even more baffled. She put the basket on the table. "Then, miss, I'll go out." Wanxin looked at the scissors in the basket and took a deep breath. She picked up the scissors. Outside the door, Fat Lass heard a scream. She pushed the door open and saw that Miss Wanxin's hand was bleeding. She quickly covered it with a handkerchief and asked, "Miss, what's wrong?" "I didn't pay attention and cut my hand," Wanxin said. "Then I'll go find madam." Fat Lass hurriedly ran to find Ning Shu and quickly ran back. She said to Wanxin, "Miss, don't be afraid. Madam's horse is here. Doctor's horse is also here." Seeing that Fat Lass was sweating profusely and her tanned face was shiny, Wanxin's heart was slightly relieved. Although she was a little stupid, she had a good heart. Ning Shu came with the doctor. When Wanxin saw Ning Shu, she immediately felt guilty. "Madam, I'm sorry. I accidentally hurt my hand. I can't do embroidery anymore." Ning Shu was very kind. "It doesn't matter. Your health is important. Embroidery can be done at any time. The most important thing is the hand. The cut is deep. It won't look good if it leaves a scar. The hand is a woman's second face. You must take good care of it." Ning Shu asked the doctor to take a look at her. The wound was not small. It was deep, but the bone was not visible. It looked a little scary. The doctor prescribed some medicine and told her to apply it and not to touch water. Ning Shu wanted to laugh. She would rather hurt herself than say that she did not want to do it. She was burdened by her reputation/BK. Chapter 35:11. Wanxin's hand was injured and she couldn't do anything. Embroidery had to be put aside. On the phone, an Xian felt very guilty and apologized to Ning Shu again and again. Ning Shu said that it didn't matter. They could do it after the injury healed. Health was important. During the time that Wanxin was recuperating, Ning Shu was very concerned about Wanxin. He gave her all kinds of things, all kinds of tonics, and went to Wanxin's room to ask about her well-being. Ning Shu's pretentious actions made her benevolent care more and more dazzling. Now, when the servants talked about Ning Shu, he was like the reincarnation of a saint. He was a very good person. Wanxin's injury kept reacting. The doctor said that it shouldn't touch water. Now that the wound touched water, it was a little infected. Ning Shu certainly knew that Wanxin touched water herself. It wasn't good to pretend to be ignorant. He called Fat Lass over and told her to take good care of Wanxin and not touch water. Wanxin felt very guilty and said that it was all her fault. Ning Shu was speechless, but he still kindly told Wanxin not to worry. Health was more important. Wanxin had been recuperating for a long time with such a small wound, so the wound kept getting infected. She probably regretted that she couldn't bear to see it and let her injury heal. Ning Shu was very happy. He clasped his hands in front of Wanxin and chanted Amitabha. He thanked the heavens that she was finally fine. Ning Shu said, "You must be careful in the future. Don't be so reckless." Wanxin looked at the basket and her expression darkened. She thought for a while and said to Ning Shu, "Madam, I want to go home." Ning Shu was surprised and asked, "Isn't your family already gone? Do you want to go back to your uncle's house?" Wanxin's parents were gone. When she was young, she lived with her uncle's family. Later, her uncle sold her to the Zhou family to be a child bride. Now, Wanxin actually wanted to go back. Wanxin nodded. "Yes, I haven't gone back for a long time. I want to go back and see my uncle and aunt." Ning Shu was speechless. He couldn't figure out what Wanxin was thinking. In order to avoid embroidery, she actually wanted to go back. Was it that difficult to say that he didn't want to do it? Was it that hard for him to swallow his pride? This was a classic case of wanting to save face at all costs. Ning Shu shook his head. "Wanxin, I don't agree with you going back." Wanxian suddenly became anxious and quickly said, "Madam, please agree. I really want to go back and have a look. I haven't gone back even once in so many years." Ning Shu was speechless. In the past, when she was living well in the Zhou family, she had never thought of going back. Now, she wanted to go back. Moreover, Wanxin's uncle's family wasn't evil, but they weren't kind-hearted either. Especially Wanxin's cousin, he would do something to hurt Wanxin. In the plot, Madame Zhou chased Wanxin away. Wanxin had no choice but to go back. After encountering her cousin, she ran away from her uncle's house. Now, Wanxin actually wanted to throw herself into the trap. Moreover, Hong Yu was not with her this time. With Hong Yu to block the disaster for her, with Wanxin's small body, something would definitely happen. Wanxin was so anxious that sweat appeared on the tip of her nose. "Madam, I beg you. You want to go back and see your family?" Ning Shu said. "Wanxin, it's not that I don't want you to go back, but you haven't gone back for so many years. Do you know what kind of character your family is now? The world is so difficult now. I heard that there's a war again. You're a little girl running away now. If something happens, how are you going to explain it to first brother, second brother, and third brother? Be good, be obedient." Anyway, Ning Shu had said everything that needed to be said. Wanxin's tears flowed down as she begged Ning Shu. "Madam, I beg you. Wanxin really wants you to go back and see them." Wanxin's heart was really depressed. The three young masters had run away from home. Wanxin's position in the Zhou family was actually a little awkward. It wasn't that she didn't hear the gossip between the servants. There was no outlet for her emotions in the Zhou family. Everyone said that Madame was very good to her and treated her like her own daughter. But Wanxin felt very uncomfortable. Very uncomfortable. Her heart was very depressed. Wanxin couldn't help but feel sad and resentful. The three men were too cruel. They left just like that. No one even came to see her before they left. Living in the Zhou family was very uncomfortable. Wanxin thought of her former family. Ning Shu shook his head and rejected Wanxin directly. "No, you can't go back. Madam." Wanxin felt terrible and tears fell down. "Madam, please take pity on me. Let me go back and see my family." Ning Shu said expressionlessly, "Wanxin, you're a member of the Zhou family now. Can't I even see my family? Wan Xin said sadly. Ning Shu said, do you know how dangerous it is? After so many years, your cousin has grown up. Can't you be sure that your cousin won't do anything to you when you go back? Wan Xin shook her head. I believe that my cousin won't do anything to me. He's not that kind of person. Ning Shu, do you have to go back? Ning Shu looked at Wan Xin. Wan Xin was a little scared by Ning Shu's gaze. She lowered her head and said softly, Madam, I really want to go home and visit my family. Ning Shu was silent for a while. Then how about this? Since you want to go back, then go back. Go to the accounting room and get some money. Buy some things and go back. Wan Xin was very surprised and quickly said, Thank you, madam. Thank you. Wan Xin was so excited that she was about to cry. Ning Shu turned and left. Wan Xin started to pack her things and went to the accounting room to get some money. She would buy shoes for her uncle and a bolt of cloth for her aunt. As for her cousin, let's talk about it later. Fat Lass saw that Miss Wan Xin was finally a little angry. She didn't look like she was half dead like before. She asked, Miss, do you want me to go back with you? Wan Xin looked at Fat Lass and shook her head. No, I can go back by myself. If Fat Lass looked like this, she wouldn't look good if she brought her back. Didn't they say that the maids of big families were all well-dressed and clean? Why did Fat Lass look like she was working in the fields? She was tall and sturdy, and her skin was dark. Fat Lass said, Miss, Madam asked me to stay by your side. If you encounter any danger or a lecher, I am strong and can chase them away for you. Wan Xin still rejected Fat Lass. Although Fat Lass was stupid, she wasn't stubborn. If Wan Xin didn't want to, she might as well eat melon seeds at this time. When could she go back? She didn't want to stay by Miss Wan Xin's side and serve her. Wan Xin packed her things as fast as she could and left the Zhou family. When she left, her steps were light and her mood was very relaxed. Ning Shu thought about it and let Fat Lass go with Wan Xin. If she really couldn't, she could bring a servant. There were thousands of ways to torture Wan Xin. This was not one of them. Moreover, when the 3 big pig trotters came back, they would definitely blame her. It was wrong to blame her for what happened to Wan Xin. /BK Chapter 35:12. Her plan had to be set up steadily. It couldn't be broken. Fat Lass took a bag of melon seeds and a few buns and chased after Wan Xin with a servant. Wan Xin left in an ox cart, which made it a little difficult for Fat Lass to catch up with her. Moreover, the exact location of Wan Xin's uncle's house was not very pure. She only knew that it was in Li village. However, Li village was not small, so it was not easy to find. Wan Xin was welcomed back home. After all, she brought back a lot of things. Her cousin, who was already in his 20s, had not yet married. At this moment, he saw Wan Xin, who was slim and graceful, with watery eyes and snow-white skin. She was wearing good clothes and was beautiful. Her cousin's eyes were fixed on her. His eyes fell directly on Wan Xin. Wan Xin felt the concern of her uncle and aunt. They brought her a stool and wiped her face with a handkerchief. She felt that the depression in the Zhou family during this period had dissipated a little. For the time being, she did not notice her cousin's gaze on her. Her aunt kept asking Wan Xin how her life in the Zhou family was. Her eyes kept looking at Wan Xin's clothes. The fabric, the headdress, and the earrings looked really valuable. It was a pity that she did not have a daughter. Wan Xin just happened to be a match for the eldest son of the Zhou family. Wan Xin was also lucky. Wan Xin entered the Zhou family, and her eldest son's illness was cured. She had the life of a young mistress. However, this Wan Xin had not come back for so many years. Why did she suddenly return the gift? Could it be that she was kicked out by the Zhou family? Her aunt asked, Did something happen to you? You can't stay in the Zhou family anymore. If she was really kicked out, then there would be another pair of chopsticks in the family and another idle person. Thinking of this, her aunt's expression was a little ugly. She looked at Wan Xin with vigilance. Wan Xin did not notice her aunt's gaze and said, "I'm very good in the Zhou family. I wanted to come back to see you." Her cousin hurriedly asked, "Sister Wan Xin, are you going to stay for the night?" She knew her son. When she saw her son's expression, she knew what he was thinking. This was a member of the Zhou family. If it were not for the Zhou family, she would definitely leave Wan Xin to her son. Her son's dormitory was really a big problem. Until now, there wasn't a single girl who was willing to marry him. What a good-for-nothing, he couldn't even get a wife. If something happened to Wan Jun here, the Zhou family would definitely not let it go. They would definitely be the ones at a disadvantage if they came looking for them. Ordinary people could not afford to offend the Zhou family. "I'm not staying overnight. Wan Xin should go back after dinner. Now that Wan Xin belongs to the Zhou family won't be happy if she stays overnight with us." His aunt was a person who loved money. There was no benefit in being tempted. She gave her son a warning look. However, his cousin was currently immersed in Wan Xin's beauty and was unable to extricate himself. Even his soul had been hooked away. "Yes, I like it very much." If he did something secretly, his cousin would definitely not dare to tell anyone about it because of her reputation. The Zhou family would not know either. Cousin felt that Wan Xin was already a big girl and was also the daughter-in-law of the Zhou family's young master. She definitely wasn't a virgin anymore. If they did it once, no one would find out. "Cousin, it's not easy for you to come back. Stay here and let my mother cook something delicious for you." Aunt said, "Wan Xin can eat anything in the Zhou family." Wan Xin did not want to go back so early. The Zhou family without the young masters was depressing and suffocating. It was not easy for her to come back, so she should stay. Although her uncle's house was not as good as the Zhou family's house, when she took a deep breath, she felt that the air in the Zhou family's house was fresh. When would the young masters come back? Bucheng, Chu Yu, Rongshuan. When her cousin heard that Wan Xin wanted to stay, his heart started to pound. He was pinched by his mother again and again, but he did not feel any pain. She had really eaten a bear's heart and leopard's guts. Wan Xin stayed. Aunt specially prepared a room for Wan Xin and asked her to call them if she needed anything at night. Feeling the care of her family, Wan Xin's heart was very warm. This kind of warmth could only be felt at home with the three young masters. In the middle of the night, the entire village was quiet. Occasionally, there were 2 dog barks, which made the village seem even quieter. The restless cousin heard the sound of snoring in his parents' room. Finally, his parents fell asleep. Cousin felt his way to the door of Wan Xin's room, opened the door, and felt his way to the bedside. He first covered Wan Xin's mouth, afraid that Wan Xin would scream and wake her parents up. Her skin was smooth to the touch. Cousin had never had such a feeling before. It was like a peeled egg, warm, and captivating. She was indeed spoiled in the Zhou family. It was really too comfortable. With her mouth covered, Wan Xin woke up with a start. She could not see anyone in the dark. She only heard a rapid panting sound in her ear, which made her not panic. Woo-woo. She struggled, but she was pressed down by her cousin and could not move at all. "Good sister, don't scream. Brother loves you and dotes on you." As he spoke, he began to take off her clothes. It was summer, so she wore very little clothes. Wan Xin was so scared that tears flowed down her face. Her whole body trembled, and she regretted running back for no reason. Cousin was a beast. Wan Xin muttered the names of the 3 young masters one by one in her heart. But now, she did not know where the 3 young masters were, and it was even more impossible for them to know that Wan Xin was in danger now. Now, Wan Xin was crying for help, but there was no help. As long as someone came, someone came to save her. Uncle and aunt were next door, separated by a wall, but she could not call for help. Wanxin was in despair. Cousin was very excited. He caressed her silky skin and could not wait any longer. Wanxin was very scared. The thing she had been protecting was actually taken away by a scum like her cousin. The last thing she had been protecting was taken away. Wanxin's world collapsed. It was as if her soul had left her body. Her body stiffened and did not move. Her face was ashen, and she was in despair. Ning Shu hurried over, but he was still a step too late. He kicked the door open, causing cousin to tremble. It was over just like that. Ning Shu saw Wanxin, who was stiff on the bed and did not move. He took the blanket and placed it over her body. "You, who are you?" Cousin was terrified. He pulled up his pants and his legs trembled. When he was in the brain, he did not care about anything. Now that his mind was clear, he was afraid of nothing. The two people in the next room also woke up. They hurriedly got up and put on their clothes. They saw a graceful and elegant woman in the room. Their son was kneeling on the ground with his pants up. Wanxin, who was on the bed, stared blankly. Her eyes did not move at all. Oh no! The two were shocked. All the strength in their body was taken away. Their legs went soft and they also knelt down. Ning Shu looked around at the people in the room. His eyes were sharp and terrifying. /BK Chapter 35:13. Actually, being tainted was one thing, but the worst thing was that she might get pregnant. In the storyline, the maid who took the blame for Wanxin was pregnant. If Wanxin got pregnant, the child would be a close relative and there was a chance of it having a genetic disease. Ning Shu really wanted to lift Wanxin up and shake her body to prevent her from getting pregnant. Or maybe she could wash her body with water. Ning Shu directly told them to scram and the three of them scrambled out. Ning Shu said to Wanxin, "Don't be in a daze, get up and wash up. Don't get pregnant. Washing up might not work." At this time, it would depend on whether or not Wanxin's main character aura was on her. However, even if she had the aura, she wouldn't be able to handle it. When Wanxin heard that, she was so scared that her body stiffened up and she started to cry in panic. Ning Shu told the people outside to bring some water in. Aunt scrambled to the well, but the ground was uneven and she fell. Cousin's soul seemed to have ascended, and he didn't move at all. Fear had completely taken over his mind. The main reason was that the Zhou family was rich. People didn't fight with officials or rich people because they couldn't win. Aunt carried a bucket of water in. There was also a ladle and a handkerchief in the bucket. Ning Shu said to Wanxin, "Wash up yourself." As he said that, he walked out of the room. Wanxin climbed up from the bed and started to wipe her body. She cried as she wiped. Her voice was filled with despair, fear, and helplessness. Ning Shu looked at the family of three and asked, "What should we do about this?" Wanxin said that she wanted to come back to see you all, but you all did such a heartless thing. Wanxin is from the Zhou family. Think about the consequences of treating someone from the Zhou family like this. Uncle knelt down and kowtowed repeatedly. Soon, his forehead was bruised, and beads of blood seeped out from it. "Madam, please let us off. It's all because his brain isn't clear. He only had one son, so what could he do? He just hoped that the Zhou family wouldn't take his life." Cousin shivered and couldn't say a word. He was a coward. He was the one who did the bad thing, but he definitely wasn't the one who had to take responsibility. This kind of man was simply scum. Aunt's brain worked quickly. She looked at Ning Shu cautiously and said to Ning Shu with a flattering face, "Madam, why don't we let De Chang marry Wanxin?" The more he spoke, the more he felt that this was a good idea. Everything would be solved. "I won't marry him." Wan Xian opened the door and shouted with a sharp voice. It was hard to imagine that such a sharp voice came from one Xian. Even if I die, I won't marry him, she shouted in despair and hatred. His aunt shut her mouth. Ning Shu snorted coldly. Have you forgotten that Wanxin is now a member of the Zhou family? Do you think you can just let it go after treating a member of the Zhou family like this? Picking up a beautiful maiden for free, what kind of sweet dreams are you having? Madam, I don't want to live anymore. As one Xian spoke, she rushed out of the central room and ran towards the well in the courtyard. She jumped into the well as fast as lightning. Everyone heard the sound of water splashing. Ning Shu was the first to react. He cursed in his heart. It was the hardest to save someone who jumped into a well. The entrance was so small and so deep. If they jumped in to save someone, both of them might have to kneel inside and their souls would go to heaven. Ning Shu heaved a sigh of relief, tied up her skirt, and jumped in with a plop. The Li family was scared out of their wits. One person jumped in, and now the madam of the Zhou family also jumped in. If something happened, their family's lives wouldn't be enough to pay for it. The three of them surrounded the well and were as anxious as ants on a hot pan. The summer was followed by the bone-chilling cold. Coupled with the fact that it was night, the cold made their teeth chatter. Ning Shu picked up Wan Xian. Wan Xian had been struggling and shouting that he didn't want to save her, but her body's instinct made her hug Ning Shu tightly. She was as stiff as iron and wrapped around Ning Shu. It made it inconvenient for Ning Shu to move. Ning Shu was really annoyed in her heart. She freed one hand and directly knocked Wanxin out with a karate chop. It was endless. It was you who insisted on going home. You either slit your throat or jump into the well. You really took suicide as a pleasure. Fuck you. Wan Xian, who had lost consciousness, was still hugging Ning Shu tightly like an octopus. She said she wanted to die, but her body was very honest. Her body didn't want to die. She had to listen to her body's wishes. Ning Shu grabbed the rope and shouted to the people above, "Pull me up." It was really cold to soak in the well water. Ning Shu hugged Wan Xian with one hand. The rope wrapped around his hand several times. One hand supported the weight of two people. Ning Shu felt that his hand could no longer feel anything. After much difficulty, she was finally pulled up. Ning Shu directly pulled away Wan Xian who was wrapped around her body. Without any pity, she directly pulled Wan Xian away. Wan Xian fell to the ground with a plop. It sounded like she was in pain. Ning Shu shook his painful arm. His palm was scratched by the rope. Most importantly, when the night wind blew, it was really cold. Ning Shu asked Wan Xian's aunt to change Wan Xian's clothes. This weak body would catch a cold later. While he was at it, he also changed his clothes. Wan Xian fainted. She didn't wake up even once in the middle of the night. She probably didn't want to face reality and wanted to faint. At dawn, Fat Lass and the servant, who were sent by Ning Shu to take care of Wan Xian, came over. Fat Lass saw that she was wearing farmer's clothes and asked in surprise, "Madam, why are you here?" Ning Shu, he didn't want to talk. Wan Xian kept fainting. Ning Shu asked the servant to find an ox cart. He threw Wan Xian on the ox cart and dragged her back to the Zhou family. Before leaving, he said to Wan Xian's uncle and his family, "I'll settle this with you in the future." The three of them were incomparably pale, as if a great disaster was about to befall them. Along the way, Fat Lass asked, "Madam, what happened to Miss Wan Xian?" Ning Shu, "She accidentally fell into the well." Fat Lass, "How did she fall into the well?" Ning Shu, "Fat Lass, why hasn't Miss Wan Xian woken up yet?" Ning Shu, in order to prevent Fat Lass from nagging, Ning Shu asked, "Why did you come so late?" Fat Lass, "Madam, we're not familiar with Miss Wan Xian's uncle's house. We didn't stop and rushed here at night. It's mainly because we took a lot of unnecessary detours. Fat Lass probably felt guilty and finally stopped asking questions. When they returned to the Zhou family, Wan Xian was carried back to her room. Ning Shu instructed Fat Lass, look after her carefully. Don't even blink. After sleeping for so long, Wan Xian should have woken up. However, if she didn't wake up, she must still be pretending to be asleep. Fat Lass said that she understood. She definitely wouldn't blink. Ning Shu changed his clothes and told Old Master Zhou about this. Chapter 35:14. When Old Master Zhou heard this, his hair stood on end. He was very annoyed. Why did something happen again? Old Master Zhou looked at Ning Shu and asked, it's already like this. Why did you bring her back? Old Master Zhou was a man. He was very simple and rough about this kind of situation. He directly said that he wanted to chase Wanxin out. Also, you ran out in the middle of the night. Aren't you afraid that something will happen to her? How do you know that something will happen to her? Old Master Zhou was purely puzzled. He didn't suspect Ning Shu. Ning Shu sighed deeply and said, I'm worried about the Li family. Previously, the Li family sold Wanxin to our Zhou family. I'm afraid that if Wanxin goes back, the Li family will see that Wanxin is good and have some dirty thoughts. I didn't expect that kid from the Li family to dare to do such a thing. Old Master, I think we should call the three of them back. Something happened at home. We don't know where these damn brats ran to. Where can we find them? What was the use of sending a telegram when they didn't even know the address? Old Master Zhou was very worried, especially now that they were still at war. Who knew if something had happened to his son? Speaking of which, it was all that woman's fault. She wasn't a qualified daughter-in-law. She whined all day. It was so annoying. Even if a man had to support the family, a woman also had to bear a certain amount of responsibility. He couldn't be happy outside and coax her at home and listen to her whining. Now that this had happened, she would definitely cry to the heavens and the earth. Old Master Zhou was so worried that his hairline moved up a lot. His children were all debts. In the past, he didn't feel anything. Now, it was getting more and more annoying. The Zhou family's daughter-in-law's pure body was gone. Old Master Zhou was really, if he didn't want his three sons' eyes, he could donate them. Ning Shu said, we can publish it in the newspaper. Although the news will be a little slow, if you're lucky, you should be able to see it. Let Wanxin stay at home for the time being. If something happens to her, the three children will hate us for the rest of their lives. It's just a matter of a pair of chopsticks. Old Master Zhou touched his head. Okay, I'll listen to you. Watch her closely. Don't let her die. Before the three bastards come back, don't let her die. Otherwise, they will think that we forced her to die. We treated them harshly. Ning Shu indicated that he understood and told Lord Zhou to rest well and not to be in a rush to do business. Right now, it was a time of war, and food was a bit tight. This was to prevent a food shortage. After that, Old Master Zhou went to the newspapers. He found a relatively large newspaper office and asked the newspaper office to send a message to the main newspaper office in the big city. Just say that something happened to Wanxin. If you don't come back now, you won't be able to see her for the last time. Lord Zhou dared to guarantee that if his three sons saw this news, they would definitely rush back. Wanxin slept for a day and a night. She was probably hungry, so she woke up. Facing the exquisite room, Wan Xian couldn't react. However, tears welled up in her eyes. How could she face the three young masters like this? She had become unclean. When Fat Lass saw that Wanxin had woken up, she immediately brought the fragrant chicken soup to the bedside and said to Wanxin, "Miss, you must be hungry. Hurry and drink some soup." How hungry would he be if he hadn't eaten for a whole day? Wan Xian turned a deaf ear to Fat Lass's words. Fat Lass had no choice but to stand guard and stare at the chicken soup and chicken pieces while drooling. She actually didn't eat such fragrant food. Anyway, Fat Lass didn't understand what Wanxin was sad about. At least until now, Fat Lass still didn't know what happened to Wanxin. Anyway, Miss Wanxin had a melancholic temperament. She had always been like this. Good things don't go out, but bad things travel 1,000 miles. In the Zhou family, there were people who said that something happened to Miss Wanxin when she went back to her parents' house and that she was done by a man. Gloating, watching the show, gossiping, all kinds of gazes gathered on Wanxin. However, Wanxin didn't go out. She was immersed in sadness. She was sad that she was gradually drifting away from the three young masters. In the past, Wanxin felt that she wasn't worthy of the Zhou family's young master. She was a daughter-in-law who was sold to the Zhou family. Now, she didn't even have her chastity. She was even less qualified. The more Wanxin thought about it, the darker the world became. The more uncomfortable she felt, the more she couldn't face the young master's strange gaze. Wanxin's body went soft. She was hungry, but she still got up to find a rope to get off. However, she was immediately pressed down by Fat Lass. Miss, your body is weak now. You can't get out of bed. Tell me what you want. Go away. Don't worry about me. Don't worry about me. However, her strength was no match for Fat Lass. She was pressed down on the bed and couldn't move. In an instant, Wanxin remembered the shadow of being pressed down on the bed and being violated. She began to scream. She screamed at the top of her lungs. The entire Zhou family could hear her screams. Fat Lass was shocked by Wanxin's scream. She quickly let go of her hand that was pressing down on her shoulder. Seeing Wanxin trembling, she was afraid that something had happened. The first reaction in her mind was to find Madame Ning Shu went to Wanxin's room. Wanxin was still screaming. She shrank into a corner and curled up into a ball. Her face was pale and she looked terrified. Madam, what's wrong with Miss Wanxin? Fat Lass was always watching over Wanxin. She didn't know that everyone in the Zhou family knew about Wanxin's situation. Ning Shu only said that it was nothing. He didn't say anything to comfort Wanxin. Wanxin wouldn't listen to anything in her current state. He also wouldn't say that the three young masters would come back. Wanxin would probably be more agitated if she heard it. Ning Shu asked Fat Lass to just look after Wanxin and get her something to eat. Fat Lass expressed that she was in a difficult position. She said that Miss Wanxin didn't eat at all. If she went on a hunger strike, she would definitely starve to death. It wasn't so easy to starve to death. It took a lot of courage to starve to death. Because of hunger, the friction in the stomach was very painful. There were all kinds of delicious food in front of them. People would rush to eat regardless of anything. With something like this happening to Wanxin, there would definitely be 1 or 2 men coming back. At the very least, one would definitely come back. If only one could come back, Ning Shu guessed that it would probably be the boss. After a round of trouble, in the end, Wanxin belonged to the boss. Wanxin was Zhou Buqing's bride. Although there was a split in the middle and there was a problem, they were still together in the end. With something like this happening to Wanxin, he didn't know if the boss would still marry Wanxin. Even if they got married, Ning Shu felt that this matter would probably be a thorn. According to Wanxin's personality, once the two of them got angry, Wanxin would probably start to cry. Do you dislike me and my past? She clutched her heart. I knew it was going to be like this. I'll leave. I'll leave. Ning Shu hurriedly shook off the terrible scene in his mind. He felt that the boss really didn't have it easy. Chapter 35:16. In the past month or so, Wanxin had been wallowing in self-pity. She had given up on herself and was inconsolable. She was not in the mood to manage her image. It was understandable that she was eager to see Zhou Bucheng since she had rushed out so carelessly. If it had been in the past, the two of them would have held hands and looked at each other with tears in their eyes, calling out, "Young master, Wanxin, young master, Wanxin." Now, Zhou Bucheng did not even get close to Wanxin, let alone hold her hand. Wanxin's eyes fell on Zhou Bucheng. Hearing Ning Shu's question, she said sadly, "I heard that the young master came back. I came to take a look." Her slightly chubby face made a sad expression. Not only did she not have her previous charm, but she gave people an indescribable feeling of strangeness and discomfort. Wanxin probably had not looked in the mirror recently. If she looked in the mirror, she would not have the courage to appear in front of Zhou Bucheng. Instead, she would try to avoid Zhou Bucheng. Ning Shu said, "Then you two can have a good chat." Ning Shu gave Master Zhou a look. Master Zhou was not willing to leave. He felt that his son could still be bewitched. Ning Shu felt that Wanxin was more refreshing now. Even if Zhou Bucheng wanted to be bewitched, he had to be forced to wake up. It was not that Wang Xinxin was ugly now, but the contrast between the current Wanxin and the previous Wanxin was too great. Only Wanxin and Zhou Bucheng were left in the hall. Wanxin still stared at Zhou Bucheng with watery eyes as before. Zhou Bucheng hesitated for a moment and walked to Wanxin's side. As soon as he walked closer, he smelled oil. When he got closer, he found that Wanxin's hair was even more oily. Strands of hair stuck tightly to her scalp, and there was a strong oily smell. Zhou Bucheng felt that the smell was not so terrible even after sitting on the train for a few days. People had metabolism. They would expel the dirty things that the body metabolized. Even a natural beauty, would have metabolites. And the beauty bathed in flower petals every day. Didn't she have to cover her smell? But Wanxin had not taken care of herself well this month. Everything made Wanxin unable to lift her spirits. Her irregular diet made her face explode with anger. In short, when he took a closer look, the contrast was so big that Zhou Bucheng refused to admit that the person in front of him was Wan. Zhou Bucheng said with difficulty, "Wanxin, people have to look forward." All the grievances that Wanxin had accumulated during this period of time burst out, and tears burst out. She hugged Zhou Bucheng in front of her, buried her head in his chest, and cried loudly. Zhou Bucheng raised his hand and did not dare to hold Wanxin at all. He allowed Wanxin to wipe her tears on his clothes. Her tears wet his clothes. The hot tears burned his heart, softening Zhou Bucheng's heart. He put his hand down and patted her back. "Don't be afraid, Wanxin. Don't be afraid. It's okay." After all, they had been friends for so many years. Seeing her like this, Zhou Bucheng's heart still ached. The woman that he had cherished and loved for so many years had actually been defiled by a despicable person. Zhou Bucheng was so angry that the veins on his forehead were bulging. Being comforted by Zhou Bucheng and patted with his hand, Wanxin suddenly thought of something and pushed Zhou Bucheng away. Caught off guard, Zhou Bucheng actually staggered from Wanxin's push. He looked at Wanxin a little dumbfounded. Wanxin wiped her tears. "Young master, don't be so nice to Wanxin anymore. Wanxin is not qualified to receive young master's care now." Wanxin was heartbroken. She turned and ran away, leaving Zhou Bucheng who did not know how to react. In short, he stood there in a daze, not knowing how to react at all. He did not chase after her. Wanxin ran back to her room, panting, and closed the door. She was probably afraid that Zhou Bucheng would chase after her, so she did not think about how to face him. Therefore, on top of bolting the door, she used her own quilt to push against the door, crying silently. Ning Shu was using his mental strength to watch the show while drinking tea. When he saw this scene, he choked. Now, when Wanxin did these things again, it was constantly exuding a comedic feeling. She was still the same person, but because her appearance was not the same, the effect was simply heaven and earth turned upside down. If it was in the past, Zhou Buqing would probably have chased after her, but now, he was like a fool. Zhou Buqing reckoned that he had suffered too many critical hits. Jia Lu was tired and had run back. His body and mind had suffered heavy injuries. He was not in the mood to care about Wanxin. After washing up, he lay down and went to sleep. He slept for a day and a night. When Zhou Buqing woke up, Ning Shu was looking at him by the bed. "Are you awake? Want to eat something? I have something to tell you." At that moment, Zhou Buqing had a bad premonition in his heart. He did not even want to eat. It was as if he directly covered his head with the blanket. "I don't want to listen, I don't want to listen." Zhou Buqing drank a bowl of porridge with difficulty. Ning Shu said, "Wanxin may not know that she's pregnant. I'm also guessing. Look, her body has changed a lot now. Come with me later and find a doctor to take a look." Zhou Buqing's expression was pained and he resisted. "Mother, it's better not." Ning Shu glared at him. "Are we going to keep this matter to ourselves? We should let Wanxin know. If she's really pregnant, we'll think of a way. When the time comes, her belly will be even bigger." "Okay." Zhou Buqing nodded and followed Ning Shu and a doctor to Wanxin's door. During this period of time when Zhou Buqing was wandering outside, he missed Wanxin very much. But now, he did not have the courage to see Wanxin at all. Zhou Buqing was puzzled and angry. How could she make herself like this? Why did she have to go back for no reason? After waking up, Zhou Buqing had a lot of thoughts running through his mind. He thought about how the fresh cabbage that he cared for was eaten by a pig. He felt that it was a pity and anger that he had not eaten it yet. In the room, Fat Lass said to Wanxin, "Miss, Madam and young master are here to see you." Wanxin immediately said to Fat Lass, "Bring me the mirror." Then, Ning Shu, Zhou Buqing, and a doctor heard a heart-wrenching scream and the sound of the mirror falling to the ground and breaking. "My face, my face." Wanxin's crying voice came from the room. Ning Shu was speechless. Wanxin finally realized and looked in the mirror. She realized that she had gained weight. The word fat was the root of all evil for women. Don't let them in. Don't come in. Wanxin was probably crying like a storm in the room, screaming and not letting the people outside in. Wanxin was ashamed to death. She had appeared in front of the eldest young master like this. She simply wanted to die. Zhou Buqing said, "Wanxin, let us in." "It's okay." "No, no." Wanxin still refused. She refused to believe that she had become like this/BK. Chapter 35:17. Wanxin refused to let them in, so they waited outside. Zhou Buqing had no choice. He could only persuade Wanxin to let them in. Wait a minute. Wanxin was probably washing up. After waiting for a while, the people at the door looked at each other. While waiting, Zhou Buqing had sighed countless times. His eyebrows were full of worry and unwillingness. Ning Shu certainly knew why he was unwilling. He probably regretted it very much. He regretted that he shouldn't have left. Ning Shu was right. Zhou Buqing really regretted running away from home. If he hadn't run away from home, Wanxin wouldn't have suffered. He wouldn't have gone to his former family for psychological comfort because he didn't feel safe. Zhou Buqing wanted to quit. He didn't want Wanxin to feel so bad and choose from them. However, he didn't expect that Wanxin would suffer even more because of this. This pain was even worse than the pain of choosing from them. Zhou Buqing glanced at the doctor. He only hoped that Wanxin wasn't pregnant. Wanxin had lost her chastity. It was impossible for Zhou Buqing to not have a knot in his heart. If she got pregnant again, it would be beyond Zhou Buqing's psychological tolerance. After a long time, Wanxin let them in. She washed up and looked a little better before letting them in. As soon as they entered, there was an indescribable smell in the room. It was like the smell of human sweat that hadn't been ventilated for a long time. It successfully made the people who entered the room stop in their tracks. Wan Xin, who was on the bed, washed up. Her face wasn't so oily anymore. Although she was a little chubbier, her foundation was there. She wasn't ugly. They walked to the bedside. The fermented smell was even stronger. It was impossible for people not to sweat. It was also mixed with the smell of feet. Fuck, it was suffocating. Especially when they got close to Wan Xin. She probably didn't have time to wash her hair. Her hair was still so oily. From the time of the incident until now, Wan Xin hadn't washed her hair. How long had it been? Her hair was so oily that it could be scraped off to cook a few dishes. As soon as they got close, the strong smell of scalp rushed into their noses with an unstoppable momentum and went straight to the top of their heads. It was really exciting. Wan Xin looked at Zhou Buqing with her clean face. Her eyes were watery, and she cried before she said anything. Zhou Buqing wanted to comfort her, but he felt that there was no place to touch Wan Xin's body, so he said, "Wan Xin, we found a doctor to check your body." Wan Xin shook her head. She looked like she was about to ascend. She didn't care about anything. She didn't care about anything. She didn't look like she was reluctant to leave this world. "Eldest young master, there's no need. I don't want to see a doctor. Let the doctor go." Zhou Buqing had been suppressing his anger ever since he came back. He knew that Wan Xin was the victim, so he shouldn't get angry at her. However, at this moment, Zhou Buqing's heart seemed to be bursting with endless hostility. The resentment, anger, and hostility that had been suppressed for a long time were all vented out. His face was somewhat ferocious as he growled in a low voice, "Then what do you want? This won't do and that won't do. If you want to die, then die. If you have nothing to do, then go back. You haven't gone back for so many years, so why did you suddenly run back?" Wan Xin was scared silly by Zhou Buqing's behavior. She looked at him in horror. She couldn't react for a long time, and tears flowed out of her eyes. Zhou Buqing had always been mature and steady. He rarely lost his temper. If there was anything, he would speak nicely. However, such a man now looked ferocious. His eyes were bloodshot. It was very scary. Men were always very concerned about women, especially when it came to their own women losing their virginity. Zhou Buqing's reaction was completely normal, but it wasn't for Wan Xin. It was as if the sky was falling and the earth was splitting. A person who treated her gently was so fierce to her. Wan Xin's disbelief, grievance, and accusation were all expressed on her face. After Zhou Buqing finished yelling and saw Wan Xin like this, he also regretted it. He softened his voice and said to her, "Let the doctor take a look at your body." "Okay, okay." Wan Xin was probably scared silly. Whatever Zhou Buqing said, Wan Xin nodded. The doctor held his breath and took Wan Xin's pulse. After confirming it, he immediately retracted his hand and said to Ning Xu and Zhou Buqing, "She's pregnant. She's been pregnant for a month." Zhou Buqing's expression became very ugly. Although Ning Xu had warned him that she might be pregnant, Zhou Buqing still felt unhappy when it was confirmed. He was very unhappy and angry. Ning Xu knew about it in advance, so his reaction wasn't very big. His expression was very serious. As for the person involved, Wan Xin's expression was immediately petrified. She stood there in a daze. Then, she reacted and screamed. It was as if a nuclear bomb had exploded. As she screamed, she used her fist to hit her stomach with tears streaming down her face. She hit her stomach very hard. She hit it so hard that her face turned pale. Even when she felt the pain, she didn't stop. The doctor hurriedly advised, "Don't do this. It's easy to miscarry. The fetus is not stable yet." When Wanxin heard the doctor's words, she hit her stomach even harder. The way she gritted her teeth made no one doubt that she wanted to beat the child out of her stomach until she miscarried. She was defiled and pregnant. As long as she thought of her scumbag cousin's face, her body being touched by him, and her pregnancy, Wanxin was so disgusted that she wanted to vomit. She hated him. Zhou Bucheng grabbed Wanxin's hand. "What are you doing?" Ning Shu shouted, "Fat lass, come over and hold her hand." Fat lass sighed and came over to grab Wanxin's hand. Wanxin couldn't break free and could only cry. The doctor acted like he was invisible at the side. He had never seen a pregnant person have such a big reaction. This was probably a scandal. He didn't listen or ask. Rich families had more secrets. After leaving Wanxin's room, they could still hear Wanxin wailing in the room. Her wailing could be heard by the entire Zhou family. In a short while, the news of Wanxin's pregnancy would probably spread to the entire Zhou family. Really, Ning Shu really didn't know what to do with Wanxin sometimes. She was so high profile and didn't care about what others thought at all. She couldn't even deal with it privately. She could only be sad and desperate. The doctor took the consultation fee and left. Ning Shu still instructed the doctor not to tell anyone. The doctor agreed repeatedly. He would be crazy to tell anyone. After the doctor left, Ning Shu said to Zhou Bucheng, "Boss, what do you think we should do? Wanxin's matter has to be resolved. Whether the child should be kept or aborted, we have to have an idea. Also, how to settle Wanxin in the future needs to be discussed. What idea do you have in mind?" Ning Shu's words were undoubtedly stabbing Zhou Bucheng's heart over and over again and again. Zhou Bucheng felt that he couldn't take it anymore. He looked at Ning Shu. "Mother, do you not like Wanxin? /BK." Chapter 35:18. She didn't like Wanxin. Was it obvious? She didn't. Ning Shu asked in bewilderment, "Boss, why do you say that? When did I hate Wanxin? If I really hated her, I would have kicked her out after what happened. What did I do?" Zhou Bucheng's face relaxed. "Mother, that's not what I meant. I just saw a lot of cloth and embroidery in Wanxin's room. Has she been doing these all the time?" Wanxin was very kind. When others asked her for help, she would never say no. She would rather suffer. Read the full story. Read the full story. Was it because doing these things was too hard that Wanxin went back to her uncle's house, and then this happened? Ning Shu almost couldn't help but roll his eyes. "I asked her to do it. You don't know. After the three of you left, Wanxin cried all day. She felt that it was her fault, so she let all of you go. She had a strong sense of guilt in her heart. After the three of you left, she had thoughts of suicide. I knew it wouldn't work if she had nothing to do all day. So I found something for her to do. If she was busy, she wouldn't have to think so much. Otherwise, she wouldn't be able to figure it out. I asked Wanxin to do it when she had nothing to do. To be honest, what Wanxin does can't be sold. It's a waste of cloth and thread to let her do it. If I knew you would think of me like this, I wouldn't have cared about her. If I hated her, I shouldn't have cared about her when she jumped into the well and let her fend for herself. But I still jumped in to save her." Ning Shu covered his heart. "Boss, you hurt me too much. I treated Wanxin like this because of the three of you. In the end, you misunderstood me. What am I after? I won't care about Wanxin anymore." Zhou Bucheng's face was full of guilt. He apologized repeatedly. "Mother, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have thought about it. My heart is too messed up. Mother, you're the best mother." Ning Shu grinned, looking like a loving mother. Wanxin's matter was really difficult to deal with. The family of three held a family meeting. Other than his second and third brother, who were still fooling around outside, their opinions didn't matter at all. They would find a wife in the future. Old Master Zhou's attitude was very clear. Wanxin is no longer chaste, and she's even pregnant. She can't be the daughter-in-law of the Zhou family. To Lord Zhou, the most unforgivable thing about Wanxin was that she was stupid, very stupid. Her focus was always on inexplicable things. Old Master Zhou was a businessman. Every day, he had to do business outside and deal with people. It was too tiring for him. If his boss married another woman, he wouldn't be able to do anything. Even if he was mentally exhausted outside, when he returned home, there was still someone who had nothing to do and was waiting for him all day long. How could he pass his days? Most importantly, if Wanxin became the eldest sister-in-law, second uncle and younger brother-in-law would all be interested in her. Just thinking about it made Old Master Zhou's heart hurt. In summary, Wanxin could not become the daughter-in-law of the Zhou family. Zhou Buqing's lips moved. He wanted to say something. After all, they had so much friendship. Zhou Buqing was reluctant to give up Wanxin. Moreover, Zhou Buqing knew in his heart that if he let Wanxin leave the Zhou family, she would definitely end her life. Old Master Zhou thought about it and said, "Then let the Li family come over to propose marriage. Wanxin is already pregnant with the Li family's flesh and blood. It's best if she gets married. Everything will be solved." Ning Shu rolled his eyes. He was rolling his eyes at Old Master Zhou. Let the rapist marry the girl who was raped. Then everything would be fine. No. Zhou Buqing objected without thinking. Seeing his father staring at him, he explained, "Wanxin is already the daughter-in-law of the Zhou family in name. If she marries someone else, what will others think of the Zhou family?" Old Master Zhou sneered as he stared at his son. "So what you're saying is that if our Zhou family were to raise someone else's child and marry an unchaste woman into our family, other people wouldn't laugh at our Zhou family?" Old Master Zhou held his forehead. The veins on his forehead were throbbing. It seemed like his blood pressure was soaring again. Ning Shu brought him the tea. "Calm down. Don't be agitated. Aren't we thinking of a way?" Zhou Buqing pursed his lips and said, "You don't have to have the child." Seeing his parents staring at him, he said, "Anyway, it seems like Wanxin doesn't want this child. If the child stays in the belly, Wanxin will keep hurting herself." Old Master Zhou asked, "If the child is dealt with, what about the adult?" Zhou Buqing took a deep breath and then slowly knelt on the ground. Seeing Zhou Buqing like this, Old Master Zhou felt that the string in his brain had snapped. What a good-for-nothing. I definitely won't allow Wanxin to become the daughter-in-law of the Zhou family. It doesn't matter if you kneel to death. Anyway, I'll pretend that I never gave birth to a son like you. Get lost and kneel." Ning Shu was the calmest person in the room. He said to Zhou Buqing, "You can't just be wishful thinking on this matter. You should ask Wanxin for her opinion. If Wanxin isn't willing, there's nothing you can do." Zhou Buqing said, "Wanxin will definitely agree." Ning Shu saw Zhou Buqing's solemn expression and sighed in his heart. Now, Zhou Buqing already despised Wanxin. He thought that Wanxin was already like this and he was still willing to accept it. There was no reason for Wanxin to refuse. He was so confident. Wanxin's disadvantage was very obvious. She didn't have chastity, and now she was pregnant. This was no longer a choice. It was not bad to get one. However, according to Ning Shu's understanding of Wanxin, Wanxin would not accept it. Instead, she would do all kinds of things and refuse, saying that she was not worthy of the young master. She would refuse this kind of charity. But subconsciously, she still felt that others would still love and tolerate her. Only then would she have the capital to do things. There would be a lot of trouble. Ning Shu said to Zhou Buqing, "Instead of kneeling here, why don't you do Wanxin's work? Let Wanxin pull herself together and start over. Your father and I will consider letting you two get married. Thank you, mother. Zhou Buqing's eyes lit up. He got up and went to find Wanxin. Obviously, he wanted to tell Wanxin the good news. Ning Shu looked at Zhou Buqing's happy back and touched his temples. She was really a bad mother-in-law. She didn't need to break up the couple with old Master Zhou. Maybe the two of them would make a mess. Well, thinking about it made him a little excited. Ning Shu had prepared the melon seeds. The most difficult thing in the world was to get along with people, especially between men and women. Zhou Buqing walked to the door of Wanxin's room. His valiant and high-spirited aura disappeared for some reason. Hearing the crying inside, Zhou Buqing was very conflicted about whether to open the door or not. Forget it. Next time, Wanxin was in a bad mood now, /BK. Chapter 35:20. If you feel that your heart is strong enough to fight against the world, then I support you. You've already survived this. What reason do you have not to be happy? There were so many things to worry about in life. If he didn't care about what others said, it would naturally be good. She didn't know if the young Zhou Buqing could withstand it. A few servants stayed behind. Zhou Buqing was not in the mood to pay attention to these people now. He now realized that there were too many factors involved in marrying Wanxin. Zhou Buqing went out for a stroll. As he walked on the street, he felt that the way people looked at him was very strange. There were also people whispering about him. When he turned around, the people whispering to each other immediately looked away. They looked guilty. They were obviously talking about him. These gazes were like needles, making Zhou Buqing feel uncomfortable all over. Some people who knew Zhou Buqing greeted him with a smile and then asked, "Are you really going to marry Wanxin?" Zhou Buqing suppressed the displeasure in his heart and nodded. He said that he was going to marry Wanxin and that he would come to the wedding banquet. Someone teased, "Zhou Buqing, you're really a winner in life. You're going to be a father as soon as you get married. Congratulations, congratulations." Although he didn't know the phrase, "a father with good fortune," the person who spoke was full of mockery. Zhou Buqing took a deep breath and didn't raise his fist to warn the other party not to talk nonsense. It was impossible to say that the Zhou family had not offended anyone in their business all these years. Now, someone was hitting them when they were down and started to ridicule them. They scolded everyone in the Zhou family as green turtles. Zhou Buqing couldn't take it anymore. He fought with the other party and went home with bruises all over his body. As soon as he got home, he was told that Wanxin had hanged herself and had been rescued. Zhou Buqing's head buzzed. He went to Wanxin's room. This was the third time that Wanxin had committed suicide. Zhou Buqing walked to the door and saw many people around. His legs went weak. Ning Shu saw Zhou Buqing and said, "Wait for a while." Zhou Buqing was tired and anxious. He asked, "Mother, is Wanxin okay?" Ning Shu said, "She should be fine. But when we put her down, she started to bleed. The child is probably in danger. Why did she commit suicide again?" Zhou Buqing asked as he wiped his face. When he touched the wound on his face, he hissed in pain. Ning Shu glanced at his colorful face and said, "People like to cause trouble with their tongues. Why do you have to be so calculative?" If he wanted to fight, he had to beat them down so that they wouldn't dare to say anything in front of him. As for what happened in private, he couldn't care less. Waving his little fists like this was completely useless. Zhou Buqing squatted down and let out a long sigh. "Mother, if she doesn't want to marry me, she can just say so. Why is she hanging herself? Did he not care about his own life at all? How could he trample on it again and again?" Ning Shu didn't say anything. Some people had already used this method to solve problems. If they encountered something they couldn't solve, they would just hang themselves and die. She would cry, throw a tantrum, and threaten to hang herself. Those who cared about her would naturally compromise. As long as he compromised, the matter would be resolved perfectly. Wasn't he afraid of courting his own death? Basin after basin of bloody water was carried out from the house. It was a ghastly sight. Zhou Buqing frowned and asked, "It was just hanging. How could her stomach be hurt?" Ning Shu looked a little speechless. "It's probably because the cloth wasn't tied tightly and the knot wasn't tied properly. After the stool kicked, the knot loosened and Wanqin fell to the ground. This fall, hurt the child in her stomach." Zhou Buqing was speechless. Wanqin whimpered in the house. She sounded like she was in pain. Zhou Buqing said to Ning Shu, "Mother, let's wait for a while more about the marriage." Ning Shu nodded. "Okay, I'll listen to you. I'm really a kind and lovely mother." Zhou Buqing also realized that his behavior was very inappropriate. Seeing Ning Shu like this, he couldn't help but say to Ning Shu, "Mother, you've suffered. Your son is unfilial and has implicated you." Ning Shu smiled slightly. "It's okay. If she treated him fiercely, he wouldn't care. Instead, she would be very rebellious. If she treated him so gently, he would think that she was kind and great." Ning Shu tilted her head. She suddenly felt that gentleness was really a powerful force. Gentleness seemed to be powerless, but it was actually very powerful. It was the same when doing things. Ning Shu was deep in thought. However, she could be gentle and strong if she wanted to. Gradually, there was no more blood coming out. The situation was almost stabilized. The doctor came out. Zhou Buqing immediately asked, "Doctor, how is Wanqin?" The doctor said, "The child is gone and her body is hurt. She needs to take care of herself. Not long ago, she found out that she was pregnant." "How long had it been?" "She had a miscarriage." Of course, the doctor also heard all kinds of gossip. He felt that it was normal that the Zhou family couldn't tolerate this child. "Can we go in?" Zhou Buqing asked. The doctor said, "Yes, but the smell of blood is strong. Let's wait a little longer." "Then let's wait a little longer." Zhou Buqing didn't insist on going in. His face was bruised. He didn't want to appear in front of Wanqin. Moreover, Zhou Buqing felt that he had to think carefully about his future with Wanqin. What should he do with Wanqin? How should he deal with it? The matter between the two of them and the pressure from the outside world made Zhou Buqing feel very tired. How could she not cherish herself? How could someone who didn't even love herself love others? Only then did Zhou Buqing remember that he had never heard Wanqin say that she liked him or loved him. Wanqin had always been the passive one. Did Wanqin like him or not? Zhou Buqing had deep doubts in his heart. The news that they were going to get married was about to spread throughout the town. However, Wanqin committed suicide at this time. Did she not want to marry him? She could have said it. She didn't need to commit suicide at all. She wanted to use her death to get rid of him. Did she hate him so much? Ning Shu smiled. No matter how much affection and patience he had, he couldn't stand the exhaustion and torture again and again. Old Master Zhou was furious. This person was crazy. If she was sick, she would go to the doctor. If she was fine, she would hang herself. Those who didn't know would think that the Zhou family had done something to her and wanted to force her to death. Anyway, Old Master Zhou was on the verge of exploding. He really wanted to throw Wanqin out of the Zhou family with the bed. How annoying. When she encountered something, she would hang herself. Hang your sister. He had never seen such a person. In the past, Wanqin was gentle and weak, making people feel sorry for her. How did she become like this now? It probably wouldn't be long before the people around knew that Wanqin had committed suicide. She had been forced by the Zhou family. The child was gone. It was the Zhou family who had caused it. The Zhou family had completely lost their face. They had become big villains. They had become the nest of villains. Wanxin had been short of food and drink since she was young. She had been raised according to the standards of a young lady. Chapter 35-21. The more Old Master Zhou spoke, the angrier he became. He was like an irritable lion, ready to jump up and bite at any time. Kick her out now. It's really bad luck. What did the Zhou family owe her that she had to humiliate her like this? A woman who had lost her virginity and now had a miscarriage. The Zhou family wanted to marry her, and they were so arrogant. It was as if the Zhou family was forcing her. What did the Zhou family do to her? After all, she had eaten the Zhou family's food for so many years and had not been treated badly. Could they think for the Zhou family? Old Master Zhou's face was livid, and there was deep disgust between his eyebrows. Obviously, he could not tolerate Wanxin anymore. Marrying such a woman was simply bad luck for 18 lifetimes. Ning Shu was still as calm as ever. He said to him, "Wait a little longer. Wait until she's a little better." Wait? What are we waiting for? Is it possible that she has a miscarriage? She's pregnant with a bastard. Does our Zhou family have to serve her well and let her finish this confinement? Old Master, it's not like that. Even if you want to kick Wanxin out, it won't make a difference. Moreover, the matter between the boss and her hasn't been settled yet. Wait until it's settled. It's just a matter of time. If you make a fuss like this, it will hurt the relationship between you and your father. If they really kicked Wanxin out fiercely, Zhou Bucheng would have given up on Wanxin. Now that he saw Wanxin so pitiful and sinful, his sense of responsibility became strong. His sense of responsibility and protective feelings for the fairer sex were immediately aroused. He felt that he was responsible for this pitiful woman. His parents were too scary. They actually treated this woman so cruelly. No, he had to be with Wanxin and take care of her. As for Wanxin's suicide, Ning Shu could only understand it as, even if I'm at a disadvantage, you may lose me at any time to increase your bargaining chip. Ning Shu spoke very gently, and his expression was calm. It made the irritable old Master Zhou calm down a little. In the end, he said tiredly, "Do as you see fit. Don't ask me. I don't want to know." Old Master Zhou rubbed his aching head and left. As soon as Old Master Zhou left, Ning Shu took out a handful of melon seeds and ate them. He asked the doctor to get some medicine for the boss. His face was colorful, and it was really not good. Ning Shu asked the doctor to prescribe whatever medicinal herbs and supplements Wanxin needed. Anyway, she had to keep up appearances. When the time came, the 3 pig trotters would not even be able to find anything to criticize her. Did I not treat her well? Did I hurt her? Did I abuse her? Nothing at all. Then what right do you have to say that I'm vicious? Scram. After Wanxin's miscarriage, Zhou Bucheng did not go to see her. Firstly, his face was probably injured, so it was not convenient for him to go there. Secondly, his heart was probably very complicated now. Following her journey, he must be wondering whether Wanxin loved him or not. Should I marry Wanxin? Why did Wanxin commit suicide? Was it because she didn't want to marry me? Previously, he had committed suicide because he didn't want to hurt them and would rather sacrifice himself. But now, why did he want to commit suicide? Ning Shu went to see Wan Xian a few times. Wan Xian's face was pale and she looked haggard. She didn't eat well and even cried for no reason. Ning Shu comforted her and told her to take good care of herself. Wanxin hesitated a few times and finally asked Zhou Bucheng if he had something to do and didn't come home. Why didn't she see him? Ning Shu was speechless. Ning Shu couldn't figure it out. Wanxin had done such a thing. She had thrown Zhou Bucheng to the ground and stepped on him. Didn't she feel it herself? She was capricious when someone loved her. Ning Shu only said that he would come to see her after a while. He did have something to do. Wan Xin was a little relieved. She drank some chicken soup and didn't eat anything else. Ning Shu saw that she was like a cat drinking water and said, "You should eat more. Your health is important." Wan Xin shook her head. "I can't eat, and I feel that I've gained some weight." Ning Shu was speechless. Was she trying to lose weight? But the problem was, did she just forget about suicide? Did it just pass like that? Ning Shu felt that it was better to visit Wan Xin less and eat melon seeds. He couldn't understand what young people were thinking. Zhou Bucheng, who had been struggling for a long time, finally went to see Wan Xin. When Wan Xin saw Zhou Bucheng, her crystal-clear tears instantly filled her eyes as she looked at Zhou Bucheng. Zhou Bucheng's heart spasmed, and an inexplicable emotion surged in his heart. What was she feeling wronged about? What was there to feel wronged about? Zhou Bucheng felt that he should be the one feeling wronged. Zhou Bucheng walked to the bedside and asked, "Are you feeling better?" As soon as his voice fell, Wan Xin's tears fell. Zhou Bucheng saw the tears and subconsciously wanted to reach out to wipe them for her, but he took his hand back. Zhou Bucheng watched Wan Xin cry, and Wan Xin also felt that the atmosphere was a little strange. She raised her head and looked at Zhou Bucheng with red eyes. "Eldest young master," Wan Xin called out in a hoarse voice. Zhou Bucheng sighed and asked, "Why can't you figure it out?" Wan Xin's hand grabbed the quilt. "Eldest young master, I'm sorry. Wan Xin is already an unclean person. I'm not worthy of eldest young master." Zhou Bucheng was confused. "Then why did you want to commit suicide?" Wan Xin's tears became more turbulent. "Eldest young master is very good to Wan Xin. Wan Xin is not worthy of you." Zhou Bucheng was helpless. "Aren't we going to get married? Why can't you figure it out?" I don't know. I only know that this is unfair to eldest young master. Eldest young master is so outstanding, but I'm like this." Zhou Bucheng said, "I don't dislike you." Zhou Bucheng felt very tired. His heart was so tired that he couldn't take it anymore. Originally, everyone said that Zhou Bucheng was a cuckold. Everyone knew that the Zhou family had a child bride. She was there to ward off bad luck. During the time that he left home, his wife in name was pregnant. He still had bitterness in his heart that he couldn't express. Now that they were going to get married, she committed suicide. Zhou Bucheng felt that he couldn't understand Wan Xin anymore. Especially after going out, his vision and heart were broadened. He knew that the country was going through a war now. He seemed petty to be dwelling on these things. Zhou Bucheng asked directly, "Wan Xin, you don't like me and don't want to marry me. Is it because of second young master or third young master?" Other than this reason, Zhou Bucheng really couldn't think of any other reason. Zhou Bucheng was really not in the mood to torment Wan Xin like this. Wan Xin looked at Zhou Bucheng in a daze. She shook her head and said, "No, it has nothing to do with second young master or third young master. It's me. It's because of me. I'm not worthy of eldest young master. Eldest young master, you're a good person and don't dislike me. But in the future, eldest young master, can we not get married? Eldest young master, I can't be your disgrace. /BK. Chapter 35-22. No matter how ambitious Wan Xin was, she was still a person who had been nurtured by the feudal society. She knew that chastity was very important to women. If young master married her, he would definitely be laughed at. Master and madam would definitely not like her. Wan Xin was worried and conflicted. She wanted to marry Zhou Bucheng, but the reality was, just like the previous situation where she had to choose one out of three, now Wan Xin also felt that she wanted to fulfill someone else's wish. "Young master, you shouldn't have married me. Any woman is better than me." Wan Xin looked at Zhou Bucheng with pleading eyes. Zhou Bucheng looked at Wan Xin steadily. Are you serious? Yes. Zhou Bucheng, then I'll listen to you. If I make you so painful, then I choose to give you up. Zhou Bucheng turned and left after saying that, leaving Wan Xin dumbfounded. Kiki Kiki. Ning Shu, who was eating melon seeds, laughed. In a way, the communication between a man and a woman was really like playing the lute to a cow. Wan Xin said that she was not good. Zhou Bucheng could find a better woman. In fact, she hoped that Zhou Bucheng would say that she was the best woman. In his heart, no one else was like her. She did not want to marry him. In fact, she hoped that Zhou Bucheng would say that he must marry her. She was worthy of him. In the end, Zhou Bucheng really did not want to marry her. This hurt Wan Xin a little. In fact, Wan Xin just wanted to strengthen her position in Zhou Bucheng's heart. How could Wan Xin not know that there were a lot of problems between them? There was a lot of pressure from the outside world, so she used her life to strengthen the weight. Unfortunately, sometimes, the more you did, the more mistakes you made. Kiki Kiki. Ning Shu felt that this task was almost done. This task was not very difficult. It was very easy. He just had to watch the show every day and eat melon seeds. These people were so dramatic. Looking at Wan Xin's incredulous, desperate, and painful expression, he wondered if she would hang herself again. Ning Shu felt that if Wan Xin hung herself again, it would really cut off the possibility of her and Zhou Bucheng. Hanging herself really annoyed him. It looked like she was threatening him, which made him feel disgusted. Moreover, she did not even care about her own life. How could she expect others to care? Ning Shu's mouth was a little dry from eating so many melon seeds. He gulped down a cup of tea and felt refreshed. Wan Xin was stunned for a long time. Her tears were about to dry up. She reacted and said to Fat Lass, "Help me put away my clothes." "What clothes? Why did you put them away?" Fat Lass asked in confusion. "Put the package away. I want to leave the Zhou family," Wan Xin said in tears. Her voice was hoarse. Fat Lass was even more confused. "Miss, why are you leaving? You're not feeling well now." "I'm going to look for Madam." Fat Lass ran over to Ning Shu. Ning Shu told Fat Lass to go back and look for Zhou Bucheng. He said to him, "Wan Xin wants to leave the Zhou family." Zhou Bucheng let out a long sigh. His face was full of fatigue and impatience. "Mother, what do you think Wan Xin wants to do?" Ning Shu said, "All her actions were just to attract your attention. Now that Wan Xin wants to leave the Zhou family, are you going to persuade her to stay?" Zhou Bucheng sighed. "I'll go and talk to her." Ning Shu also followed. When they reached Wan Xin's room, Wan Xin had already started to pack her things and her clothes. These clothes were actually prepared for her by the Zhou family. They were all good clothes. Zhou Bucheng asked, "What are you doing?" Wan Xin smiled bitterly at Zhou Bucheng. "It's not suitable for me to stay in the Zhou family now, so I should leave." "Thank you for your concern, young master and madam." Zhou Bucheng was a little impatient. His tone was naturally not good. "Even if you want to leave, wait until you're better. You just had a miscarriage. Don't you care about your body?" Zhou Bucheng didn't know what Wan Xin cared about. What did she care about that she didn't care about her body or her life? "It's better for me to leave. It's not good for the Zhou family if I stay. It's not good for the Zhou family's reputation," Wan Xin said weakly. "Why are you leaving? Wait until you're better. Don't worry, I won't force you to marry me." Zhou Bucheng snatched the package from her hand. "I was about to tell you something. I'm going to leave home soon. I'm going to go out and explore. You don't have to feel uncomfortable." Wan Xin was completely dumbfounded. You're leaving?" Zhou Bucheng nodded. "Yes, so don't worry about what I'll do to you." Wanxin grabbed Zhou Buqing's hand emotionally. Is it because of me? Is it because of me that you're leaving? Tears streamed down her face. Her face was full of blame and frustration. Zhou Buqing pushed her hand away. No, I want to go out. The world is going through a huge change now. I just want to go out and take a look. It has nothing to do with you. Even though Zhou Buqing repeatedly said that it had nothing to do with Wanxin, Wanxin firmly believed that it was because of her that Zhou Buqing wanted to leave. Wanxin cried and said, "Young master, don't go. I'm willing to marry you." Ning Shu was speechless. He wanted to cover his face. Wanxin was a little too self-righteous. When others still loved her, she didn't think much of it. When others didn't love her anymore, this kind of behavior was quite sad and ridiculous. Zhou Buqing shook his head. I already said that this has nothing to do with you. Since you want to leave the Zhou family, leave when you're better. Take good care of your body. You'll meet better people in the future, people who will treat you better. Zhou Buqing returned Wanxin's words to her. After saying that, he left, leaving Wanxin, who couldn't react. Wanxin probably didn't expect that Zhou Buqing would ask her to stay when she wanted to leave. But he didn't. And she also learned that Zhou Buqing, who had just returned home, was going to leave again. This, Ning Shu said to Wanxin, take good care of your body. Don't think too much. It was said that the more you did, the more mistakes you made. Did you think that Zhou Buqing would try his best to keep you? Think too much. When he loved you, he could tolerate anything. When he didn't love you, sorry, who were you? Wanxin was probably going to die of grievance in her heart. The pig trotter had changed. He didn't treat her well anymore. Ning Shu also left, leaving behind Wanxin, who couldn't cry even if she wanted to. Old Master Zhou strongly objected to Zhou Buqing leaving home. He had just come back and now he was going to leave again. Did he still have this family in his heart? But Zhou Buqing insisted on leaving. Old Master Zhou's disgust for Wanxin came to another level. It must be because of her. Once or twice. Did he have to torment her like this? What was wrong with him? Be the reincarnation of a god. Ning Shu, on the other hand, was very much in favor of this matter. She even tried to persuade Lord Zhou. He let Old Master Zhou choose between two choices. One was to let the boss marry Wanxin. As long as the boss was at home, these two people would be entangled. Who knew if something would happen again? The second was to let the boss go out and see the world. After a long time, his feelings for Wanxin would fade. Old Master Zhou decisively chose the second. /BK Chapter 35-24. After Wanxin left the Zhou family, Master Zhou was as happy as a 300-pound child. He almost set off firecrackers at the gate and asked people to quickly clean up all the things that Wanxin had used. On the phone, he cleaned Wanxin's room well to get rid of the mold. Because of Wanxin, he was ridiculed in the business world. There was no one else like him. Children were all debts. Wanxin was not his daughter. He finally got rid of her. It was really refreshing. It was 3 unfilial sons. None of them were by his side. If one of them was by his side, it would be good to inherit his business. Ning Shu had been paying attention to the situation of Wanxin leaving the Zhou family. Wanxin didn't go back to the Li family village. She was still clear-headed. If she went back, she would be even more miserable. Without the protection of the Zhou family, Wanxin was a soft persimmon. They could bully her however they wanted. When she went back, she might force herself to be his cousin's wife. Although his cousin was close, people didn't care much at this time. However, many people in the town knew Wanxin. During this period of time, there were a lot of rumors. Although Wanxin had gained weight recently, her foundation was there. She was much better looking than ordinary people. Seeing Wanxin alone, some bold hooligans began to harass Wanxin. They said that she was chased out by the Zhou family. They were tired of playing with her and wanted to play with their brothers. Wanxin was so scared that she trembled. She hid in the room and didn't dare to come out. When she came out, she was often blocked. Once, she had no choice but to jump off the bridge. She jumped down with a plop. The people who were harassing her were scared and hurried to save her. If she died, they couldn't bear the consequences. After such a scene, fewer people harassed Wanxin. Those who were unreasonable were afraid of those who didn't care about their lives. Wanxin was a person who didn't care about her life. She hung her neck and jumped into a well. In this situation, she was also a person who risked her life. Although this was the case, Wanxin's life was not easy. In the eyes of others, Wanxin was a person who didn't love herself. Some people said that Wanxin was a slut. She was the daughter-in-law of the Zhou family, and she was pregnant with a bastard. Some hooligans who had nothing to do, couldn't find a wife and wanted a woman, so they set their eyes on Wanxin. Some people even went to Wanxin's room. As a result, Wanxin was not safe in her room now. After a period of time, Wanxin became extremely haggard. She couldn't sleep or eat well. There were also some malicious words that made Wanxin really want to cry. At this time, there was no one to protect her, not even a safe place. If they were in the Zhou family, these shameless people would definitely not dare to climb over the walls of the Zhou family. Wanxin, who was isolated and helpless, teared up. If she had known, she would have married eldest young master. Why do you have to do this? The outside world was too scary. Wuxia endured it with fear and trepidation, but she never thought of leaving the town. If life here was already so scary, then the outside world must be even scarier. Wanxin could not take this step. She was terrified. When Uncle's family learned about Wanxin's situation, they began to make plans in their hearts. It seemed that Wanxin had been abandoned by the Zhou family. That's right, the Zhou family is a big family, how could they want this kind of Wuxia? Hence, the family of three found Wanxin and said that they wanted to bring Wanxin home. Now that Wanxin had nowhere to go, she wanted to live with them. Moreover, Wanxin had already lost her chastity and could marry her cousin. When Wanxin saw such a shameless family and wanted her to marry her cousin, that disgusting man, she absolutely could not accept it. Wanxin wanted to run away, but she was dragged back home by her uncle's family. Wanxin ran out and wanted to go to the Zhou family to ask for help, but before she could run to the gate of the Zhou family, she was dragged back. Wanxin looked at the tightly shut gate of the Zhou family. Her heart was filled with despair and regret. If she had known, she would have left this place. Her cousin was not good-looking and had a bad character. How could such a man be the eldest young master? Why did things turn out like this? Madam and master were good to her. At least, uncle and aunt were good to her. Wanxin was afraid of despair and felt despair about her fate. Ning Shu did not make a move. He just used his mental strength to watch Wanxin being dragged away. To be precise, Wanxin had nothing to do with the Zhou family anymore. Wanxin's uncle's family was not good people. Wanxin would definitely suffer if she lived with them. However, this had nothing to do with Ning Shu. He just needed to let Wanxin leave the Zhou family and cut off her relationship with the Zhou family. A girl like Wanxin was especially good at harming people who were good to her. For example, the Zhou family. She could torment the Zhou family. She jumped into a well for no reason. After that, she still had to face the care and love of the Zhou family. No one blamed her. They all cared about her. If she was at her uncle's house, probably no one would care about her. So what if she wanted to commit suicide? She would probably be beaten until she did not dare to commit suicide. It was fine if she could kill herself. If she didn't, she would face a beating. Life was very difficult. She couldn't even do it if she wanted to. Not everyone had the opportunity and qualifications to do it. Those who couldn't get would always be in turmoil. Those who were favored were fearless. There were too many people who loved Wanxin. He didn't use his hands on this mission. He used gentle strength to solve the problem. Not bad, not bad. Since he could solve it in a gentle way, why should he look ferocious? It would affect his image too much. After Wanxin was brought back, Ning Shu found out from the news that the Li family had indeed let Wanxin and his cousin get married. They had forcefully suppressed the marriage. Before the wedding, Wanxin's aunt came to the Zhou family to sound them out. She was asking if Wanxin really couldn't marry the young master. Did the Zhou family really give up on Wanxin? Then they wanted her son to marry Wanxin. Ning Shu's response was that Wanxin had nothing to do with the Zhou family. They could do whatever they wanted. They didn't have to care about the Zhou family. Aunt was very happy. Her son had found a wife, and it was such a beautiful wife. Previously, she had been worried that the Zhou family would offend them. Now that the trouble was gone, she had killed 2 birds with 1 stone. Before she left, Aunt even asked Ning Shu to attend the wedding banquet. She knew in her heart that how could the madam of a rich family lower herself to attend a wedding banquet. Therefore, Ning Shu knew that Wanxin was going to marry his cousin, but he didn't tell old Master Zhou. Wanxin's matter was over just like that. After marrying his cousin, Wanxin had nothing to do with the Zhou family. It was useless for the 3 pig trotters to come back. Wanxin was already married. Those who had a little shame wouldn't have any entanglements with Wanxin. As for whether Wanxin was happy or not, Ning Shu said that it didn't matter. He didn't care. During this time, third brother came back and brought back a beautiful and unrestrained girl. She was wearing the clothes of a minority and was very beautiful. She was warm and cheerful, completely different from Wanxin's style. She was very compatible with third brother and complemented each other. /BK Chapter 35-25. It was also a good thing to let the 3 pig trotters go out and gain experience. At least, the 3 of them knew that there was no such thing as Wanxin in this world. Please look at the most complete. There were many. There were also many types of girls. It felt like the 3 of them revolved around Wanxin, and their horizons were severely limited. They had never thought about what kind of girl was suitable for them. If they went out like this, they would eventually meet her. Even if they didn't meet her, they should at least gain some experience. He hoped that the eldest would be able to find a girl he liked when he went out. There was no future for him to be entangled with Wanxin. But now, even if he wanted to, he couldn't. Ning Shu gave himself a thumbs up. He had completed his task and was about to leave. During this period, he held the wedding of the third brother and a foreign girl. After the 2 of them got married, they ran away, saying that they wanted to go back to the girl's hometown. They said that life there was more freedom. Old Master Zhou was so angry that he stomped his feet. He thought that his son had married into someone else's family. Every time Old Master Zhou was angry, Ning Shu used Wanxin to persuade him. At least the third brother didn't marry Wanxin. As soon as he compared himself with Wanxin, Old Master Zhou felt that no matter how difficult it was to accept, he would accept it. It could be seen that Old Master Zhou had a bad impression of Wanxin. He could even accept this kind of marriage. He couldn't accept any of his sons marrying Wanxin. This time, the third brother was leaving home. Ning Shu finally didn't feed him wine with sand in it. The third brother was a little flattered. He finally didn't have to drink such wine. He heard that his eldest brother drank it again. Of course, Ning Shu had to give the third brother face. He couldn't lose face in front of his wife. He smiled and waved goodbye. Very good, he solved one problem. He didn't know when the second brother would bring his wife back. He probably couldn't wait. They were at war. The girl he met on the battlefield must be a strong girl. He was very relieved. Before leaving, Ning Shu learned about Wanxin's situation. Wanxin didn't marry for long and seemed to be pregnant. Wanxin definitely wasn't willing to stay in the Li family. She tried to escape time and time again, but her uncle's family watched her very strictly. After escaping too many times, they even locked her in the house. Especially when she was pregnant, they didn't let her out. They made her eat, drink, and poop in the house. It was like watching a prisoner. It wasn't that Wanxin didn't want to die, but it was very difficult to die when she was watched. It wasn't easy for him to find a wife. Of course, he couldn't let her die like this. For a girl who had been pampered for 20 years to have such a day, it was as if she had fallen from heaven to hell. She couldn't bear it anymore. Ning Shu paid a little attention to it and did not care about it. After all, Wanxin was not her responsibility. Ning Shu didn't quite understand why Wanxin insisted on staying in the town. If it were someone else, they would instinctively want to escape from this place. She wanted to escape from this painful place, but Wanxin didn't want to. He could not figure it out. Dan Qing, mission complete. Do you want to leave the mission world? Dan Qing's tone sounded very anxious and a little desperate. Ning Shu nodded. Let's go. His vision blurred and he returned to the system space. Ning Shu looked at the torn pieces of paper in the system space. The little mouse was tearing the book apart. Through its furry face, Ning Shu could see the sadness and despair on its face. Upon returning and seeing such a messy scene, Ning Shu was in a bad mood. He looked at the little mouse. I told you not to mess up my place. Now get out of my demon immortal castle. The little mouse roared. I don't want to learn these things. This is the knowledge of lowly humans. I don't need it. Are the humans crazy? Why did they come up with such a difficult question to make things difficult for their own children? What kind of deep hatred do they have for their own children? Why do they want to force their own children to die? Little Rat asked incredulously. They were forced to learn these things every day. Why were humans still thriving and not dying out? Ning Shu was expressionless. This is the reason why you tore the book. It's such a mess. If you don't clean it up, then get out. The little mouse looked at Ning Shu with its big black eyes and snorted. It silently used its 2 paws to pick up the paper on the ground and stuffed it into its mouth. I'll clean it up. I've never seen a woman as fierce as you. Women should be gentle and considerate. When Li Wen was still the emperor of the human world, the little mouse followed Li Wen around. He saw the concubines of the imperial harem flattering Li Wen. They were gentle and considerate. Ning Shu snorted and looked at him from the corner of his eyes. The little mouse stuffed the paper into its mouth and stuffed all the paper on the ground into its mouth. Ning Shu kept a straight face. He wanted to laugh in his heart. He only asked him to clean it up, but he didn't let him eat it. This was not learning. It was easy for him to suffer. Ning Shu didn't stop him from eating the paper. After eating it, he wouldn't throw or tear the book in the future. Dan Qing said to Ning Shu, it's not appropriate for a creature like this to receive the inheritance of human knowledge. It's also not worth it. Dan Qing was going crazy. Why the hell did he recommend himself? It was torture. It was too scary. Ning Shu said. If I don't find something for him to do, he'll tear my system space apart. The little mouse finished all the paper scraps on the ground and said to Ning Shu, I'm hungry. I want to eat scraps. Ning Shu said, wait. Before Ning Shu left, he warned the little mouse, if you tear the book again and make a mess, don't eat scraps. Eat poop. Just as he was about to leave the system space, the chat system rang. Ning Shu opened it. It was a message from someone he didn't know. The message surprised Ning Shu. Is it the person in charge of Liren? Now that Liren has something to discuss, he's here to discuss it. Ning Shu. Liren. Ning Shu searched his mind for a while before he remembered Liren. If something good happened, it definitely wouldn't be good. Ning Shu glanced at the address and prepared to go over. No matter what, he had to go and take a look. Liren. It was the little brat who inherited her looks and thoughts. The little mouse watched from the side. Seeing that Ning Shu was about to leave, he asked, "Are you going to get scraps?" Ning Shu sighed. "I told you to learn more, but you didn't. You can't even read. I have something to do now, so I won't be going." The little mouse was unhappy. He snorted and his fur stood up. What's more important than getting food? Ning Shu couldn't be bothered with him and went to the virtual space. The virtual space was a place that only mission takers could enter. It was very similar to the law space. It was a place for mission takers to learn, communicate, or buy things. Before he walked in, Ning Shu saw Liren from afar. He was wearing a fiery red shirt with a V-shaped collar that exposed his chest. It was especially flirtatious. She wasn't that deep in the past. Especially when she saw his face again, it had a bit of masculinity to it. It was her former face. Ning Shu was speechless. She really wanted to disfigure him. Her heart was itching to beat him up violently, /BK. Chapter 35-26. There was a person standing next to Liren. She stood next to Liren, and it felt like she was holding Liren hostage. Ning Shu thought for a moment and turned to leave. Then, she heard Liren's voice. Ning Shu. Her face had changed so much, but Liren still recognized her. To be honest, seeing her face on a man's face, Ning Shu really wanted to scratch his face and destroy it. Ning Shu saw that she couldn't leave, so she walked over and asked, "Why are you looking for me? You're his guarantor, right? He killed my people in the mission world." There was a woman next to Liren. Her eyes were sharp, and she had a strong aura. She didn't look like someone who was easy to talk to. Ning Shu shrugged. "I want to know the ins and outs of the matter." Ning Shu glanced at Liren. "Come here." The woman stopped Liren. "If you want to talk, talk here." Ning Shu said directly, "I want to go to the side." "Why don't you just kill him? Don't come to me. You." The woman was annoyed by Ning Shu, but she didn't stop Ning Shu and Liren from going to the side. Ning Shu looked at Liren. "What's going on? Is there a conflict between the missions?" Usually, when a mission met a mission taker, even if there was a conflict, they would seek common ground and solve it together. After all, the number of people who killed each other was small. If the mission failed, they would be killed. Liren stared at Ning Shu. Ning Shu took a deep breath. "I'm asking you a question. Speak. Are you mute?" "Liren, how did you change? You don't look like a married couple anymore. You don't look as good as before." Ning Shu was expressionless. "Sorry, I made some adjustments." "What's going on?" Ning Shu resisted the urge to scratch his face. "If you don't tell me, I'm leaving." Liren said disdainfully, "Wasn't it me who killed her gigolo? I killed her forbidden predator. He came to find trouble with me during the mission, so I killed him because I was annoyed. She was so angry that she came looking for you. She probably didn't dare to kill me. Now that she's looking for you, she's definitely here to ask for benefits." Ning Shu chuckled and said, "You're really a clever little devil." What the fuck, Liren was only a level mission enforcer. Could he be a little more vulgar? Could he develop more vulgarly? Back then, she had been rather wretched. Only when she had some strength did she dare to act wantonly and talk so loudly. The sexy Liren was courting death. Ning Shu glanced at the woman. "Why didn't she kill you?" Liren said righteously, "I said I have someone behind me." She thinks that I'm also your gigolo and wants to negotiate with you. Now she's angry in her heart. Li Ren said as he spread his hands. She has a lot of gigolos. She probably doesn't care much about losing one. Just give her something and she'll be appeased. Li Ren didn't really care. A lot. What kind of operation was this? Ning Shu felt that his life was very dull. Li Ren, men like to be surrounded by beautiful women. Women also like to be surrounded by handsome men. They enjoy being in the limelight. Men and women all dream of having a harem. Although they're souls, it's better to be satisfied mentally. The satisfaction of the spirit is more blissful than the physical body. Of course, there's a price. She has to provide them with some convenience and resources. Ning Shu, oh. Didn't this sound like her raising skeleton? But the nature was different. She wanted skeleton to work for her. Ning Shu, then why should I pay the price to protect you? Save yourself. Isn't it good to live like a heartless beast? Isn't it good to live? Why do you have to court death? Li Ren's almond eyes widened. He looked at Ning Shu and said in surprise, am I not your gigolo? Ning Shu. Are you? Li Ren. Am I not? Ning Shu, no. Li Ren, I am. Besides, other people are looking for trouble with me. I can't let them bully me. Li Ren said directly. Do you want to see me live like a grandson? You can only be a grandfather if you can be a grandson. Ning Shu said and reached out to straighten his collar. Don't be so flirtatious with my face, Kay. The woman kept looking at them with a very ugly expression. She ignored Ning Shu and Li Ren and completely ignored her. She walked towards them. Have you discussed it? You better give me a suitable explanation. Otherwise, I will report this matter and let the judge deal with it. Mission enforcers killing each other in the mission world. I believe the judge can deal with it fairly. The woman stared at Ning Shu and Li Ren unkindly. Her eyes were filled with hatred. She looked at Li Ren with extreme disgust. He killed her people. That man was the most gentle, the best to her, especially good at pleasing her, and he was also good-looking. Of course, she felt sad that he died like this. Ha, old woman, he was the one looking for trouble with me. I killed him. Otherwise, he would have killed me. Li Ren said righteously. He almost put his hands on his hips. Besides, he failed the mission and was killed. What does it have to do with me? Being called an old woman by Li Ren, she was so angry that her face was distorted. What kind of attitude is this? I won't let this matter go. I want you to pay the price. Ning Shu was speechless. Sexy Li Ren, online death seeking +2. Wasn't it good to be alive? The woman opposite him was definitely stronger than Li Ren. Where did Li Ren get his confidence from? Ning Shu felt that if he was the woman opposite him, he would pinch this bitch to death. Find the judge, find the judge. We can find out who is right and who is wrong if the judge comes, Li Ren said firmly. The woman was so angry that her face turned green. She took a deep breath and her chest rose and fell. She couldn't be bothered to talk to Li Ren. She looked at Ning Shu and said, this is the result of your discussion. Ning Shu didn't have much to say. Anyway, Li Ren and that pretty boy weren't good people. Who knew what had happened between the two of them when they quarreled? Ning Shu said directly, what do you want? Ning Shu's attitude was almost the same as Li Ren's. The woman was so angry that she was about to explode. What kind of attitude is this? Ning Shu said, you want an explanation and compensation from us. Let's talk about it and discuss it. As for bowing and apologizing, as far as I know, you were the one who looked for trouble first. You can't blame my people for killing you. Why did he have to poke and provoke people for no reason? My people looked for trouble first. The woman pointed at her own nose and looked at Ning Shu incredulously. It's not up to him to decide who's causing trouble for whom. He was the one who was greedy for other people's treasures. How dare he talk nonsense? The woman was so angry that she was about to cry, /BK. Chapter 35-28. The senior uncle mocked and despised Ning Shu as soon as he arrived. Read the full story. Read the full story. Li Ren narrowed his eyes and looked at Grand Elder Tai Shu from head to toe. The senior uncle glanced back at him, his gold-rimmed glasses flashing with a cold luster. He stood there with a straight posture, the corners of his windbreaker fluttering slightly. His thin lips were pursed coldly, making the woman in front of him look even more humble and weak. She was even speaking in a submissive manner. Liren looked away, not wanting to look into the senior uncle's eyes. The senior uncle adjusted his glasses and didn't say anything. However, the atmosphere became heavy and gloomy, and the pressure became very low. It made people feel uneasy and uncomfortable. Ning Shu said, "There's a bit of discord. It's unwise for this woman to find a judge." The senior uncle's appearance fee was very expensive, and he had never returned empty-handed. Once you found the senior uncle, it meant that you had to die together to seek justice. In turn, the senior uncle would find a reason to make you pay. Previously, she had said that she could compensate this woman, but she had a pig teammate with an arrogant attitude, which made others gnash their teeth in hatred. Liren furrowed his brows tightly. "Will it implicate you?" Ning Shu grinned. "What do you think?" Liren said, "I'm sorry." The woman finally explained the ins and outs of the matter. She was sweating profusely, and she felt uncomfortable under the pressure of the senior uncle's aura. The senior uncle looked unhappy. "This matter?" The woman said nervously. Liren casually targeted other mission enforcers in the mission world. "This is not a small matter." The senior uncle directly asked the main system about the mission world. Every mission enforcer's mission would be recorded. The truth of the matter would be known after checking. He didn't have the time to listen to the two sides bickering, so Ning Shu didn't even say anything. The senior uncle directly said, "It was that mission enforcer who started the conflict." "Ah." The woman was stunned. "That's impossible. It was clearly him. What's the point of making a fuss about a mission enforcer who's already dead? Do you really have nothing better to do? If you don't want your soul power anymore, you can donate it." The woman's face was pale and she looked unconvinced. The grand uncle was not someone who would judge a person's expression. He said directly, "Fine her 1 million merit points." Not only was the woman's face pale, but she was also on the verge of tears. She was filled with grief and indignation, but there was nothing she could do. She dared to be angry, but she did not dare to say anything. 1 million merit points was not a small number for a nomological avatar, especially now that the nomological avatars no longer had any tax, their means of earning money were limited. 1 million merit points was enough to make a woman cry. The woman pointed at Liren. "What about him? He killed a mission enforcer during a mission. Shouldn't he be punished?" The Grand Elder said coldly, "Of course you should be punished. You brought out a dead mission enforcer to cause trouble. If you don't want your soul power anymore, you can apply to have it wiped out." Grand Uncle didn't care about the relationship between this woman and the dead mission enforcer. In his eyes, the mission enforcer was already dead. Using this as an excuse to cause trouble was indeed not idle. The woman was speechless. He was actually speechless. The woman took a deep breath. She wanted to see how the judge would punish these two people. "I accept the punishment." She was furious. She had lost one person, and now she had lost 1 million merit points. What was this? However, she didn't want to lose face. She just wanted to make this person unhappy. When Ning Shu heard the Grand Elder say 1 million merit points, he was in a bad mood. Fuck. The Grand Elder looked at Ning Shu and Liren. At this time, Liren was quite manly. He stood in front of Ning Shu and confronted the Grand Elder. The Grand Elder said coldly, killing each other in the mission world. You're really capable. Liren couldn't withstand the Grand Elder's power. His body trembled a little. Ning Shu stood behind him and saw that his legs and stomach were trembling. It was probably hard for him to hold on. The Grand Elder tilted his head slightly and looked at Ning Shu, who was behind Liren. Why are you hiding? You can't cause trouble when you're causing trouble. Ning Shu pushed Liren aside and explained, I didn't cause trouble. I was just passing by. I didn't inform the organization. This matter has nothing to do with me. The Grand Elder laughed. 1 million each. When Liren heard 1 million merit points, he frowned. 1 million merit points. Where would he get 1 million merit points? As expected, Ning Shu knew this was the case. He stepped heavily on Liren's foot, causing Liren to hiss in pain. The Grand Elder looked at Ning Shu warningly. Don't cause trouble. Take care of your own people. Next time, just shoot them to death. Ning Shu turned around and helped Liren tidy up his collar. He pinched Liren's exposed breast hard. You must listen to me. Otherwise, you'll be shot to death. Understand? Liren, I've become a punching bag. The Grand Elder, TSK, you two are the most irritating people in the world. Ning Shu, it's better if you go blind. The Grand Elder left in a flash. The atmosphere was no longer tense. Everyone present subconsciously breathed a sigh of relief. Ning Shu didn't even look at the woman. He turned around and left with Liren. If there was a problem, it would be better to solve it privately. If the organization intervened, both sides would be in trouble. The organization wanted an appearance fee. Mediation was useless. Hey! The woman shouted. Ning Shu and Liren turned around at the same time and looked at her expressionlessly. Ning Shu, what else do you want? Didn't you already give the result? It's your people who wanted to cause trouble. Anyway, they were going to die together. No one would have an easy time. The woman had nothing to say, but she felt aggrieved. Ning Shu looked surprised and took 2 steps towards the woman. The woman subconsciously took 2 steps back. When she reacted, she was embarrassed and angry. Wasn't this showing that he was afraid of her? The woman was a little afraid that Ning Shu would take away her nomological imprint. Although she had been punished, she felt that the judge was biased towards her. At least when she spoke to Ning Shu, her tone was familiar. Ning Shu looked at her. What else do you want? Hasn't this matter been resolved yet? Ning Shu raised his eyebrows and looked at her. She was also very unhappy now. She had lost 1 million merit points. It was inexplicable. 1 million merit points were skeleton snacks for a long time. Ning Shu's expression didn't look good. The woman was already thinking of retreating. 1 million merit points were gone just like that. If the nomological imprint was taken away, it would be a huge loss. This Ning Shu was a demon. A demon who specialized in stealing nomological imprints. Unfortunately, he was still alive. The more the woman thought about it, the more she felt that she couldn't stay any longer. The more she looked at Ning Shu, the more she felt that his face was becoming distorted and ferocious. The next second, he would run towards her. The woman turned and ran, disappearing in an instant. Liren raised his eyebrows. She was scared away. She was scared away. Liren lowered his head and looked at the weak little girl. She had snow-white skin, a small mouth, and almond-shaped eyes. Her exposed shoulders looked round and small. Very fierce. /BK. Chapter 35-29. Liren looked away from Ning Shu, touched his nose, and said, "I already said that I was wronged. Why are you punishing us?" Ning Shu said, "I'm the one who's wronged." Liren was a little indignant. "We can't just let this go. Why should we be punished? It was the other party who started it." Ning Shu said angrily, "Okay, stop messing around. 1 million for your life." When she was fighting with Zhang Jiasen, she even got shot. So Ning Shu didn't even bother to defend herself when she gave him 1 million. So be it. If they continued to mess around, the judge would really be annoyed and shoot them to death. Did they really think that the judge was here to uphold justice? He was here to quell the riot. Suppress. Take note, suppress. It was like cancer chemotherapy. It would kill the cancer cells, and at the same time, it would also kill the normal cells. This showed the lethality of the Taishu. Generally speaking, if it wasn't something earth-shattering, it shouldn't alarm the judge or the organization. The organization was dispatched to suppress. Liren was very obedient and asked, "What will happen if I don't pay the money?" Ning Shu wiped his neck. "Gotcha, of course you'll be killed." Liren pouted. Ning Shu said, "Then can you pay for me first?" Ning Shu said expressionlessly, "Look at my mouth. Gun. It's fine if you find trouble for me, but now you're relying on your elders. Unfilial descendant. If you don't have money, save it yourself. You'll be able to pay eventually." He still had to pay Liren. "Pay my ass." Ning Shu became angrier and angrier as he thought about it. He pinched Liren's ear and warned, "If there's a next time, I'll definitely let you die a horrible death. My patience is limited. It hurts, I know." Liren rubbed his ears and grimaced. "What can I do when someone comes to find trouble with me? In that situation, it's either he dies or he dies." Ning Shu snorted. "If we're going to do something bad, it's better to do it secretly. Do you want to see earthworms?" Ning Shu asked casually. Liren shook his head. "No, there's nothing to see. It's fine as long as he's doing well. I'm really in a sorry state right now. I'll go back when I'm strong enough." Ning Shu chuckled. "Then how can you have the nerve to call me that?" Liren did not say anything. In fact, Liren was quite cold. Perhaps this was the nature of these creatures. They disdained to integrate into society and did not need emotions to maintain them. Ning Shu tidied up Liren's collar. After a while, the collar slipped down. Ning Shu really wanted to pinch the exposed red fruit. "Your clothes are really interesting." Ning Shu sneered. Liren smiled. "Indeed. Okay, I'm leaving." Ning Shu said and returned to the system space. Liren wanted to say something, but the person in front of him disappeared. "TSK, what a heartless woman." After not seeing each other for so long, she left without saying anything. Liren frowned and clutched his stomach. A knife had been stabbed there before. Even though he no longer had a body, he could still feel the pain. Liren smiled. This smile was very complicated. The place where he had been stabbed before disappeared. Ning Shu returned to the system space and saw the little mouse tearing a book again. There was a layer of paper on the ground. Ning Shu. Did the little mouse only have 7 seconds of memory? Didn't she already say that it was not allowed to tear books? Why was it tearing books again? She was not in a good mood now. She stepped on the little mouse and ground her feet hard. It was like stepping on rubber, full of elasticity. The little mouse screamed and escaped from Ning Shu's feet. It began to swallow the paper again. What a problem. It tore and swallowed, and tore again. How much did it hate learning? Ning Shu felt that the books on her bookshelf were probably gone. When the little mouse finished tearing them, it probably would not tear anymore. Ning Shu sat on the sofa and rested for a while before picking up the pieces. Anyway, she had not been informed yet. She also paid the 1 million fine. Ning Shu only paid for herself and did not pay for Liren. Humans were lazy. When they were used to relying on someone, they would subconsciously do as they were told. Ning Shu was afraid that Liren would become lazy. After paying the fine, Ning Shu took a look at how much money she had in her account and what she gained from this mission. She did not know if the client was satisfied or not. The most important thing was that she did not dirty the client's hands. Killing people did not have to see blood. Sometimes, a soft knife was more painful than a real knife. The wound of a real knife would heal one day, but a soft knife would not. It was like a maggot attached to the bone. It would even dig deeper and deeper, causing more and more pain. Name, Ning Shu. Age, 27. Level, Super Mission Taker. Reward card, 27,710, 10 million for a reward card. Soul value, 361. Health value, 331. Wisdom, 441. Luck, 301. Charm, 201. Spiritual power, 451. Physical power, 321. Aptitude, 391. Faith, 250,000. Merit, 30,000,000. Soul strength, 152. Authorization ticket, 0. Pure heart, none. Law comprehension, none. Constructed world, reincarnation world tools, calm aura, heart calming pill, amulet 4, upgraded amulet 2, faith bell. Honorary titles, goddess of war, selfless ancestor skills, 5th. Ring shooting technique, intermediate fighting technique, intermediate level poison technique, beginner level business management knowledge, beginner level code programming, beginner level lawyer skill, sage ghost catching skill, beginner level cooking skill, intermediate level embroidery skill, trash hypnosis aura, mother of the world, queen's blessing, sister model worker, Chin Shi's blessing, leader aura, Grassa's blessing, best friend for life, Meow Meow Meow's blessing, life-saving hand, Zhu Su's blessing, founding woman, Chen Ermiai's blessing, beauty in law, Chen Ning's blessing, bane of the blood clan, Jasmine's blessing, transcending race communication, Bai Sanyang's blessing, brave heart, Wang Ying's blessing, bloodthirsty tyrant, Ni Bingyan's blessing, heart of peace and joy, luck aura, faith aura, longevity. Mission completion rate, 100%. Obtained 10-point cards, 8 attribute points, and 60% of the soul power from the soul force user. 60% was not bad. Generally speaking, the client would offer half of their soul power, and this 60% would belong to her. There was no need to share it with the organization. Ning Shu absorbed the soul force, removed the impurities, and stored it in his dantian. Little Mouse had already cleaned up the confetti on the ground. Her cheeks were puffed up, and she looked at Ning Shu with her big black eyes. When are you going to get me something to eat? I'm starving. Ning Shu, right away. Why do you look like a reincarnated hungry ghost? Coincidentally, the system notified him that Ning Shu was going to deal with the Star Rock. Chapter 35-30. When Ning Shu arrived in the void, he saw Tai Shu dealing with the star stones. It seemed that Tai Shu had gone to deal with the previous matter midway and would continue to deal with the star stones when he came back. However, there was one more person beside Tai Shu this time. Li Guo squatted beside Tai Shu, holding her face with both hands and looking at Tai Shu. Her burning eyes could make people feel glorious. Ning Shu felt that Li Guo was a little different from before. Her whole body was rippling with an attractive aura, making her look like a plump and juicy peach. Moreover, there were droplets of water on her skin that slowly flowed down her skin. The fragrance was enchanting and full of temptation. Tai Shu ignored Li Guo. Ning Shu walked over and said, "Let's change shifts." Li Guo immediately became excited and smiled. "It's finally over. Let's go." Although Ning Shu didn't want to say it, Li Guo was really anxious now. Her skin was a little bright red, and she was very attractive. There was also a fragrance on her body. It didn't seem like a fragrance, but it had a different smell. Ning Shu couldn't help but make a bold guess. Could this smell be the smell of Li Guo's race in heat? You go first. Don't look for me if there's nothing. Taishu rejected Li Guo. Li Guo didn't care about his rejection at all. She reached out and grabbed Taishu's arm. Taishu shook her off. Go away. Li Guo was still smiling. She reached out and started to take off Taishu's clothes. If you don't want to go to other places, you can do it here. Ning Shu. TSK. You two are the most eye-catching in the world. I'll return your words to you. They were going to play in public. There were so many people here, including the army and the big shots who were picking up fragments. It was eye-catching, but they wanted to see it. Ning Shu was also excited. If Taishu was really pushed down by Li Guo and played in public, his dignity as a judge would be gone. Let's see how he could act cool in the future. If he could really see this scene, his life wouldn't be in vain. However, Ning Shu felt that it was impossible. Senior uncle waved away Li Guo's hand that was groping his body. He glanced at Ning Shu who was gloating and said to Li Guo, go find someone else. After a round of torment, Li Guo's face was flushed red. Her entire body was emitting an aura that made one's bones go soft. Li Guo panted and said, don't be so stingy. I need your bloodline. Just once. After that, I won't pester you anymore. If you don't agree, I can only keep going in circles and pester you. Ning Shu, who was watching from the side, couldn't help but ask, what does this bloodline mean? Li Guo looked at Ning Shu with watery eyes. She seemed to have melted into a puddle of water as she lifted Ning Shu's chin with her slender fingers. Little girl, what do you know? The first generation of creatures born in the void will have a strong, pure, and powerful bloodline. Later on, the bloodline power will slowly decrease. Oh, so it was like that. Grand Uncle was a first-generation void creature with a pure bloodline. The child born from his seed would definitely be very powerful. Then to Li Guo's race, it would be another powerful force. Ning Shu suddenly felt that Li Guo's race had a matriarchal social structure. Children would only know their mother but not their father. He believed that Li Guo wasn't the only one in this race who went around borrowing seeds. There should be other people as well. Could it be that this race wanted to collect the bloodlines of all the races in the void? The abilities of the races in the void were different. Races like Li Guo didn't have any power when they were conscious. However, if they lost their rationality, they would become bloodthirsty maniacs who would go on a rampage until they tore their target apart. There were also races like the little mouse who had zero intelligence but was very powerful. However, without exception, all of them were very powerful. However, they also had various flaws and shortcomings. Ning Shu asked, he's so resistant. Could it be that this will take away his bloodline power? Seeing how resistant Grand Uncle was, could it be that he wanted to guard the sunrise? He was cultivating the virgin technique and couldn't be broken. Ning Shu laughed maniacally in his heart. How can that be? There won't be any impact. It's just that the bloodline power of his descendants will be slightly inferior. Just like the transmission of genes, it was a selective inheritance. Some would be inherited and some would be discarded. Of course, this would cause the bloodline power of his descendants to be impure. Ning Shu held Li Guo's finger that was lifting his chin. He shook his head and said, it's a pity that I'm not a man, nor was I born in the void. Otherwise, how could I watch you suffer like this? Such a beauty was suffering, but Grand Uncle was actually indifferent. Sigh. Beauty. Yeah, it's a pity that you're not a man. Li Guo sighed. Ning Shu said, aren't there so many people? For example, Sang Liang can do it too. He believed that Sang Liang was probably cultivating the virgin technique. Li Guo said, I have to pick one that's pleasing to the eye. Sure enough, Grand Uncle gave people the feeling that he was the best in the world. If they didn't borrow his seed, who else would they borrow? Yet, he looked like he was abstinent. It made people have the urge to kill him and make him kneel on the ground and beg for mercy. They couldn't help but feel like committing a crime. Ning Shu held back his laughter and said to Grand Uncle, "Judge, I think you should just accept it. He doesn't want you to take responsibility. He even raised your child for you. He doesn't want you to pay child support." Grand Uncle said, "Heh, if you're so good, then go ahead." Ning Shu sighed. "I can't. If I could, I would have done it. I'm a woman, and I don't have a body." This was the dream of many men. Ning Shu was purely adding insult to injury. She didn't mind seeing this scene. It was worth it even if she was blinded. Grand Uncle looked at the two women coldly and turned to leave. Seeing that Grand Uncle had left, Li Guo hurriedly chased after him, bringing along a fragrant wind. Ning Shu sniffed. The smell of hormones. It was very attractive. It was an indescribable smell. The fragrance was like the tide of the sea. Some of the big shots around them were a little embarrassed. They didn't look at Li Guo, but Li Guo acted as if she didn't see anyone else. Her psychological quality was also quite strong. She was like a leech burrowing into Grand Uncle's body. She was greedy and eager. It was probably because Grand Uncle's bloodline power was more attractive to Li Guo, but it was difficult to conquer such a man. Li Guo had to go through the difficult process of learning the scriptures from thousands of miles away. The key was that Grand Uncle didn't have a heart. Ning Shu began to process the star stones. On the way, she also had to pick up the fragments. There was another person at home waiting to eat the fragments. It was a pity that she couldn't see the live play. Ning Shu picked up as many fragments as possible and fed the little mouse. Otherwise, the little mouse would ask her for food from time to time. This time, after eating, she would take a rope and lead the little mouse into the void. It was time for the little mouse to show its value. She knew that she couldn't eat without working. If she couldn't find treasures, she would beat her up. Chapter 35-31. Ning Shu had to pick up the shards while dealing with the star stones. However, the vines were able to pick them up quickly. Ning Shu tried his best to pick up as many shards as possible. He used to hope that the next shift would come earlier. Now, he hoped that the next shift would come later so that he could pick up more shards. Little Mouse's appetite was too big. It was impossible to feed it. When the next shift came, Ning Shu didn't even know how many shards he had picked up. Back in the system space, Little Mouse was limp. It looked at Ning Shu and said weakly, "You finally returned the favor. If you eat a little more, you won't be able to see me again. It'll be goodbye forever." Ning Shu. How many days have you been studying? You're starting to talk like a scholar now. Not bad, not bad. Little Mouse, please don't say the word studying. He hated it. Ning Shu took out the mess in space. There's a lot of them. They're all yours. Little Mouse raised its butt and started to eat fiercely. It was crying as it ate. It started to reminisce about the past. Back in the day, I used to eat energy. Now, I'm reduced to eating this kind of garbage. What a terrible life. TSK, Little Mouse was now full of a sour smell. It was starting to show off its literary talent. Little Mouse was only the size of a fist, but it ate very quickly. Its mouth was so small that it felt like it was connected to another world. It finished all the shards that Ning Shu had picked up in a short while. Ning Shu. Are you full? Little Mouse, half full. Ning Shu. You're still half full. You don't know how many shards I've picked up. Are you kidding me? She picked up so many shards that the other bosses didn't have enough to pick up, and the mission time would be extended. Ning Shu looked at her strangely. He used his eyes to tell her to stop. However, Ning Shu ignored him and picked up more shards shamelessly. She had picked up so many, but it wasn't enough. Little Mouse felt wronged and said, "This kind of thing can't even withstand hunger. It's not even considered food. Do you humans treat water as food? I eat these things like drinking water. I don't feel anything at all. At most, I'll be full for a while, but I'll be hungry very soon. If you give me an energy body, I can go without eating for 10 days to half a month." Ning Shu chuckled coldly. Energy body? Giving the energy body to you to eat? You must be dreaming. She didn't even have an energy body. Even if she did, she wouldn't give it to the little mouse. It was gone after eating a bubble of dung. It was simply a waste of heavenly resources. Ning Shu took out a small collar and said to the little mouse, "Since you are full, let's start working." Little Mouse lazily lay on the sofa. "What kind of work?" Ning Shu smiled and said, "Of course it's to look for treasures. You are full now. Why don't we go look for treasures?" Little Mouse looked at the collar and string in Ning Shu's hand and jumped up. "If you want to look for treasures, then look for treasures. Why do you need a string? Are you going to tie me up?" Ning Shu smiled kindly. "Why would I? I won't tie you up. It's just that the void is so big. I have to hold you. If you get lost, where am I going to find you? Bah, you are walking a dog. I don't want to wear this thing. I'm already wronged enough to look for treasures for you. I sacrificed my dignity, and now you want to walk me." Ning Shu saw that Little Mouse refused to obey and his face turned cold. "So you want to go back on your words? You don't want to keep your promise. You didn't say you were going to walk me. You said you were going to look for treasures, but this is not the way to look for them." When it came to his dignity, Little Mouse argued. Even his speech and logic were smooth for a long time. See, studying was useful. At least it could increase one's IQ. Ning Shu spread out his hands and said, "I didn't say I couldn't walk you. If you don't agree, then I have no choice. I can only hand you over to the organization and let them do as they see fit." Little Mouse was flustered and exasperated. He bared his teeth and all his fur stood up. His black bean-sized eyes were full of humiliation and grievance. Ning Shu caught him and comforted him while putting on the collar. "Anla, it's not me walking you. It's you walking me. You have to look at it from both sides. You are the one who dragged me. Of course, you are the one who walked me." Little Mouse thought for a while. That seems to be the case. Ning Shu fastened the collar and held the string. He said, "Now go to the void." Little Mouse kept pulling at the collar on his neck. He was very uncomfortable. "Wait, I want to make a deal with you." Ning Shu raised his eyebrows and looked at Little Mouse. "Say it." Little Mouse said, "If you find the energy body, you have to share half of it with me. I can only be full by eating the energy body. The fragments are useless. If you don't agree, I won't go." Ning Shu thought for a while. Even if they found the energy body, it would be a profit for him to take half of it. After all, she couldn't find the energy body. Ning Shu hesitated for a long time. In the end, he reluctantly agreed. "Okay, we'll share it equally." Little Mouse was very happy. When he saw Ning Shu's unhappy face, he suddenly felt that he had taken advantage of Ning Shu. He dragged Ning Shu into the void. Ning Shu looked at the boundless void. A little further away was darkness. He didn't know where the darkness extended. He only felt that it was very, very far away. Every time he looked at the void, Ning Shu would think about where the end of the void was and whether anyone had reached the end of the void. It was like ordinary people longing to reach the end of the world. Ning Shu asked, "Where are we going now?" The void was so big. He really had to rely on Little Mouse to go anywhere. Ning Shu pulled Little Mouse into his body. He didn't want to let Little Mouse bring him into a ditch. Little Mouse was the only one who could remove the collar on his neck. Once he put it on, it wouldn't be easy to take it off. He. Little Mouse looked around and said, "Pick a direction. This is a test of our luck." Ning Shu was speechless. She was unlucky. Little Mouse had been exterminated. Her luck was very bad. People who liked to seek death usually had bad luck. She and Little Mouse were both people who liked to seek death. Ning Shu asked, "What about your talent?" "I have a talent, but I can only sense it from a certain distance. That's why I left your organization. How can there be treasures around the void? Your people have taken them away. Is there something wrong with your IQ? Why are you asking such a stupid question?" Ning Shu was speechless. He shouldn't have taught Little Mouse to read. If he taught his disciple, he would kill his master. Ning Shu looked at Little Mouse silently. He pulled Little Mouse back. Little Mouse didn't pay attention and sat down. She grimaced and said, "What are you doing?" Chapter 35-32. Little Mouse indignantly chose a direction and pulled Ning Shu along. Ning Shu leisurely followed behind Little Mouse. Little Mouse originally wanted to embarrass her and make her beg for mercy, but seeing Ning Shu like this, Little Mouse felt bored and slowed down. Running was very tiring and he had been hungry for a long time. His heart was stuffy. The two of them walked leisurely and at the same time, they had to be wary of the creatures in the void. After all, it was very dangerous for two weaklings to wander in the void. Little Mouse did not have endless subordinates now and was actually a weakling. Sigh. They did not see any treasures along the way. The void was so big but there were so few treasures. As they walked, Ning Shu saw two small black dots in front of them. They were probably humans. Seeing creatures in the void, Ning Shu's first reaction was not to be curious but to avoid them. With her current strength, she could only cause a ruckus in the organization. Even in the organization, there were many people who could kill her. Not to mention the creatures in the void. Little Mouse sniffed and wrinkled her pink nose. "This smell is really stinky." "What smell?" Ning Shu sniffed and did not smell anything. Little Mouse's sense of smell was really good. "It's the people in front. One of them is from your organization. Do you know that you are all emitting a stench?" Little Mouse said in disdain. "Everyone in your organization is reeking of this horrible smell." Ning Shu asked, "What smell?" Little Mouse said, "The smell of rot. It smells like mold and rot." Ning Shu was speechless. Ning Shu said, "Your body is full of the smell of dead rats." That meant that the people in front were from the organization. There was nothing to be afraid of. "Go, that way." Ning Shu shook the rope and said to Little Mouse. "Little Mouse, fuck you, do you think I'm an animal?" "Ning Shu, aren't you a beast?" The two of them quickened their pace and were about to catch up to the two black dots in front of them. The Little Mouse stopped in his tracks and leaned back with all his might. The collar had constricted his double chin, and his face was even bigger than his body. "I'm not going," said the Little Mouse. "I hate him." Ning Shu pulled the rope with all his might to drag him over there. The Little Mouse retreated backward with his butt on the ground. Helpless, he was dragged along by Ning Shu. The Little Mouse whose neck is being strangled by life. As he walked closer, Ning Shu exclaimed. No wonder the Little Mouse was unwilling to come over. "It's the two of you. Are you two entangled in the void?" The two of them were Senior Uncle and Li Gua. Li Gua's face was flushed, her eyes were moist, and the fragrance on her body was getting stronger. The Little Mouse tried his best to hide behind. He hated and was afraid of Senior Uncle. After all, his subordinates and an entire race were all killed by senior uncle. The hatred of killing one's father and stealing one's wife was not excessive, especially now that Li Wen was missing. Senior uncle glanced at Ning Shu and the little mouse. The little mouse leaned back, and the collar and double chin became more obvious. His face was full of wrinkles. Li Guo looked at Ning Shu and asked, "Come to the void to play?" Ning Shu nodded. "Yes, you haven't succeeded yet." Li Guo curled her lips and nodded. "Yes, why are you so stingy? Just once." "I'm really uncomfortable." Ning Shu frowned. "Is it that uncomfortable? How about," Ning Shu pulled the little mouse forward. "Do you think he's okay? Senior uncle is difficult to deal with. Let's deal with him first." Li Guo glanced at the little mouse, whose facial features were wrinkled like a mangy dog, and said directly, "Forget it. This thing is okay too." Ning Shu said. "He's also a creature in the void." Li Guo said directly, "Little sister, it's my first time too. You can't let me do that with a mouse." Ning Shu said. "He can turn into a human." Li Guo ignored Ning Shu's words. During the time they were talking, senior uncle had almost disappeared in front of them. Ning Shu and Li Guo followed closely. The little mouse refused to leave. It didn't want to stay with senior uncle. Ning Shu directly carried it away. Although he didn't know why these two people were here, he felt that there was a good show to watch. He, the little mouse was held by the neck. It asked uncomfortably, "Aren't we going to find treasures?" "Don't worry. Take your time. An epic event is about to happen. If you don't watch it, you'll regret it for the rest of your life." The little mouse said. "You have a hobby of watching people mating?" "Senior uncle, wait for me." Li Guo called senior uncle's name gently. It was so coquettish that it made people feel numb. Senior uncle stopped in front of them. Li Guo's face immediately rippled with a beautiful smile. She rushed into senior uncle's arms. Senior uncle kicked Li Guo away. He looked at Ning Shu and said, "Why are you wandering around? If you have nothing to do, go do missions and deal with star stones." Was he trying to drive her away? Ning Shu said, "I've done all these. I'm just looking for treasures in the void. You can do whatever you want. Don't worry about me. Just pretend I don't exist." Li Guo also said, "Yes, just pretend she doesn't exist. This kind of thing can't be more normal." Li Guo threw herself at senior uncle again. Senior uncle kicked her again. This cycle repeated. Senior uncle kicked Li Guo again and again until Li Guo's face was about to be deformed. Ning Shu felt pain just by looking at it. "Li Guo, come here." A group of people suddenly appeared in the void. They were all women. The leader was very old. Her hair was gray, and her skin was loose and wrinkled. It was obvious that she had lived for a long time. Ning Shu was a little surprised. It was the first time he saw an old creature in the void. When the old woman saw senior uncle, she made a strange hand gesture. It was probably a greeting. She said to senior uncle, "Senior uncle, the younger generation in the family is young and ignorant. Please forgive her. Thank you for sending her back." Li Guo looked at the old woman and said reluctantly, "Elder, I'm in heat. I feel uncomfortable." Li Guo leaned towards the Grand Elder as she spoke. She sniffed hard and sniffed the Grand Elder's scent. In front of Li Guo's family, senior uncle kicked her away. Everyone present twitched their mouths. The old woman shouted at Li Guo sternly, "Li Guo, come here." Due to the old woman's majesty, Li Guo reluctantly walked towards her clansmen. Her eyes darted around the Grand Elder. Senior uncle looked indifferent. He ignored Li Guo's gaze and said to the group of women, "Don't let her out when she's in heat." Li Guo looked disappointed and resentful. In the end, she did not succeed in borrowing his seed. Ning Shu was expressionless. She was also very disappointed. She had thought that she would come to the void to do that. In the end, Li Guo was kicked back home. Chapter 35-33. Li Guo's brain was probably filled with hormones. Otherwise, how could she not know the way home? The grand-uncle walked in front and took her home, but she ran after him. Ning Shu looked at the twisting pear fruit and felt a little disappointed that it did not meet her expectations. Ning Shu felt that he couldn't kill the grand-uncle. If someone could punish him, Ning Shu would be quite happy. He couldn't do anything else, but he could at least shout 6666. The elder of the Li Guo race said some polite words to the grand-uncle, but he looked indifferent and didn't answer. Then, grand-uncle, we're leaving. This girl is young and won't disturb you again, the old woman said to the grand-uncle kindly. She didn't treat the grand-uncle as a junior. Then, she pulled the estrus Li Guo away. A group of people came to pick up Li Guo. It seemed that Li Guo's status in this race wasn't low. But it was also possible that so many people came because they were afraid of the grand-uncle. The grand-uncle said indifferently, you can leave, but you have to pay the bill first. She ate a lot in my territory. The old woman's face trembled, but she still asked, okay, what do you want, grand-uncle? The grand-uncle, 3 energy bodies. Ning Shu, pft. What did Li Guo eat to be worth 3 energy bodies? Oh my god. This is simply extortion. I can't stand it. The old woman's hand that was holding the walking stick paused. She was dumbfounded. She held back her anger and said, what did Li Guo eat to be able to eat so much energy bodies? The grand-uncle, how would I know what she ate? The bill is so much. If you want to know what she ate, let her vomit it out for you. Everyone, are you a devil? Everyone looked at Li Guo, whose eyes were watery. Li Guo looked confused, especially confused. Ning Shu was surprised. Why wasn't she a germaphobe or disgusting? She could even vomit it out. Damn, the grand-uncle was really something. The grand-uncle's appearance fee was very expensive. He would definitely cheat him if he did something. If he sent Li Guo back, not only would he be able to get rid of Li Guo who was in heat, but he could also extort a sum of money from her. The old woman's tone was a bit cold. She said to the grand-uncle, grand-uncle, you're being a bit unreasonable. The women behind the old madam huddled together and pulled Li Guo behind them to protect her. Li Guo couldn't see senior Uncle Tai Shu anymore, but she actually jumped up to look at him. Ning Shu was speechless. Her brain was probably fried by the adrenaline. The Grand Elder raised his eyebrows. So, you want to renege on your debt? So you're saying that the future leader of your clan is freeloading everywhere without paying? Old woman, the old woman gripped her walking stick tightly and gritted her teeth. Her voice was eerie as if it was squeezed out from between her teeth, making her face look haggard and old. Grand-uncle, are you going to shed all pretense of cordiality? Senior Uncle Tai Shu waved at Li Guo. Li Guo immediately licked her face and walked towards Senior Uncle Tai Shu. Her eyes were filled with hearts, but she was stopped by someone. The group of women hated Li Guo for failing to live up to their expectations. The old woman's teeth creaked as she gritted her teeth. Her aura was so strong that it made Li Guo sober up a little. Ning Shu silently took a few steps back and used Senior Uncle Tai Shu's body to block others' view. Was this old woman going to go berserk? When this race went berserk, they had no sense of reason at all. Ning Shu didn't want to be the target of being torn apart. Let Senior Uncle Tai Shu attract the hatred. The old woman's expression was particularly twisted and sullen, but she didn't go berserk. Instead, she panted and said, I don't have 3. 1. Senior Uncle, 5. Old woman, 2. Senior Uncle, 8. The old woman said, 3 yuan it is. Give it to him. The old woman didn't want to see Senior Uncle Taishu anymore. A woman took a box and put 3 energy bodies in it. The energy bodies were the size of a man's fist, which wasn't small. The colors were different. 3 energy bodies were obtained just like that. It was really easy and comfortable. Ning Shu felt that his hand was wet. He looked down and saw the little mouse in his hand staring intently at the energy bodies. Its saliva was dripping like a waterfall. It was restless and wanted to rush up and take a bite, but it didn't dare. Its saliva was free and wet Ning Shu's hand. It was sticky like washing his hands. Ning Shu was so disgusted that he directly threw it away. Senior Uncle Taishu took the box and looked at the energy bodies inside. He closed the lid and put it away. He said indifferently, "When her estrus is over, she can still come and be a guest." The old woman snorted and almost spat out a mouthful of saliva. She probably couldn't control herself and went berserk. Ning Shu felt that Li Guo probably wouldn't appear in the organization. After all, it was so expensive to come once. Energy bodies weren't ordinary things. Even if Li Guo wanted to come, she would be suppressed by the people in the clan. "I want to go." "No, you don't want to go." It was enough to make these people feel sorry for these energy bodies. This was cutting the weeds and eliminating the roots. Senior Uncle Taishu probably wouldn't be harassed by Li Guo. Things were done to the extreme. If borrowing seeds was a characteristic of Li Guo's clan, then the whole clan should know that Li Guo borrowed Senior Uncle's seed. It should be a tacit agreement. Of course, it was a good thing if she could borrow it. If she couldn't, there was no loss. But she didn't borrow the seed, and now she lost the energy bodies. Li Guo was probably a naughty child. These women couldn't wait to beat her up. And they didn't expect Senior Uncle Taishu to be so shameless. Probably because she lost so much, Li Guo, who was in estrus, woke up a lot. She curled her lips and looked at Senior Uncle Taishu. This person was really bad. She couldn't find Senior Uncle Taishu in the future. And this time, when she went back, the elders in the clan might find her a male to help her through her estrus. No, it was better to endure it. Senior Uncle Taishu turned a blind eye to Li Guo's resentful eyes. Li Guo sighed and whispered something in the old woman's ear. Her eyes kept glancing at Ning Shu. Ning Shu suddenly had a bad premonition. He immediately cowered and lowered his sense of existence. The old woman looked at Ning Shu and said, "Young friend, I heard that you are a friend of my Li Guo. Do you want to come to our clan and have a chat?" Ning Shu. She was an insignificant person. Why did she mention her? Senior Uncle Taishu glanced at Ning Shu and didn't say anything. Ning Shu smiled and waved his hand. "No, next time. I still have things to do." One who was unaccountably solicitous was hiding evil intentions. Ning Shu's eyes flickered as he thought of the Thunder Law imprint. Ning Shu had almost forgotten about it. It was mainly because his soul wasn't strong enough. He would wait until it was strong enough to integrate the Thunder Law imprint. Chapter 35-34. It seemed that Li Guo hadn't given up on the Lightning Law imprint. If she went to their clan, she might not be able to return. Even if she could return, Ning Shu didn't want to go. Although Li Guo was calling her little sister now, she felt that her brain was damaged. They had fought before, and there was discord between them. She couldn't go. She couldn't go. The old woman looked at the little mouse at Ning Shu's feet and said, "This little thing beside you is very greedy. Go to our clan and get it something to eat." Ning Shu pushed the little mouse behind her with her feet. "It's not hungry." The little mouse. "I'm very hungry, very hungry." The little mouse was about to jump up. The little mouse wanted to speak, but Ning Shu grabbed its neck and pinched its mouth, rejecting the old woman's suggestion. Li Guo said to Ning Shu, "Go. What's the point of staying in the organization all day? I'll take you to travel in the void and broaden your horizons. Ning Shu didn't want to broaden his horizons. He smiled and shook his head. I'm not going. The old woman frowned and looked a little unhappy. She hit her walking stick and said, "Why? Don't you want to give this old woman some face?" Ning Shu understood more clearly. She was using peaceful means before resorting to force. Now, she was taking advantage of her seniority. The grand uncle turned and left. After 2 steps, he turned back and said to Ning Shu, "Why aren't you leaving? Are you very free?" "Hey, I'm coming." Ning Shu followed behind the grand uncle with the little mouse in his arms. He looked back at the group of people and sped up to catch up with the grand uncle. "Bye-bye. My boss is calling me. I have to go." He probably wouldn't see Li Guo in the organization again. It was so expensive. If it was an ordinary clansman, they probably wouldn't be willing to take out the energy body. Judging from the grand uncle's tone, Li Guo would be the future leader. The emperor of a matriarchal society. Damn, that's so cool. Ning Shu was a little envious. She was the king of a clan in the void. If Li Guo's clan didn't compromise, the grand uncle would probably do something to Li Guo. He would give the organization the limit of what they could bear and get rid of Li Guo after getting benefits. What kind of business was this? If Li Guo did not come to the organization, they would probably encounter each other in the void. That would be a little dangerous. The little mouse was still drooling. He stared at the grand uncle's back with burning eyes. It was probably the first time in his life that he had seen the grand uncle so passionate and full of desire. Hunger had made the little mouse forget about the revenge of the extermination of his clan. Little mouse whispered to Ning Shu, "Can you have an energy body?" Ning Shu said directly, "Daydreaming will come faster." There was no need to even think about it to know that this kind of thing would not succeed. The probability was completely negative. Moreover, it was for the little mouse. If he ate it, his stomach would be cut open. Little mouse suddenly became very dispirited, and its eyes lost the hope of life. "I really can't fight for it." Ning Shu said, "Don't even think about it. Otherwise, you'll be the one suffering. We'll look for it ourselves. Don't even think about the energy body in Grand Uncle's hands." It had always been Grand Uncle who took other people's things. When had he ever seen Grand Uncle leak things through his fingers? Moreover, something like the energy body could not be leaked. Even if he took out something and felt that the harvest was more than the value of it. Little mouse was completely paralyzed like a persimmon. Drooling, it rolled its eyes like a retard. Ning Shu quickened his pace and caught up with Grand Uncle in front of him. He said, "Congratulations, congratulations. You got the energy body without any effort." Grand Uncle was too lazy to pay attention to her and just said, "Oh." Ning Shu looked at Grand Uncle with a smile. Grand Uncle frowned. "What dirty things are you thinking about in your head?" Ning Shu was speechless. What was dirty things? "I'm not thinking about anything. I'm not thinking about anything." Ning Shu looked puzzled. "What do you think I'm thinking about?" It was really strange. She really wasn't thinking about anything. She originally wanted to thank him, but in the end, her mind wasn't that dirty. Ning Shu looked at Grand Uncle expressionlessly. Grand Uncle frowned. A dead person's face is so ugly. Ning Shu couldn't bear it anymore. She threw the wet little rat directly at Senior Uncle's body. Little mouse was covered in his own saliva. Grand Uncle disappeared in a flash, and Little Mouse was thrown far away. In the air, Little Mouse was dumbfounded. "Okay, I failed." Ning Shu held the rope and said to Little Mouse, "Let's go treasure hunting." Little Mouse said weakly, "I don't want to go. I'm very hungry." Ning Shu was speechless. "Didn't you just eat? The fragments are simply not enough to fill my stomach." If I didn't see the energy body, it would have been fine. Now that I've seen it, I'm exhausted. Next time, next time. After Little Rat finished speaking, he closed his eyes slightly. It seemed that he was really exhausted. Did it try its best to restrain itself from snatching it? It was very likely that it would be killed if it did. It was really fucking miserable. Life was either on the road to starvation or on the road to being killed. Speaking of this, Little Rat wanted to cry. Ning Shu saw that Little Mouse was indeed in a bad state, so he nodded and said, "Okay, we'll talk about it next time." Ning Shu returned to the system space and threw Little Mouse directly into the pool. It was too dirty with saliva all over. Ning Shu washed his hands a few times and smelled them. There was still the smell of dead mice. "Your breath stinks." Ning Shu couldn't help but say, "Remember to brush your teeth after eating next time." Little Mouse was speechless. Ning Shu took out the Thunder Rule imprint from the box. It was a pocket-sized silver lightning bolt. If it wasn't for Li Guo's reminder, Ning Shu would have almost forgotten about it. Ning Shu pinched his soul and felt that the strength of his soul could be tested. There was always someone who couldn't forget about her Thunder Rule imprint. However, after fusing with the Thunder Rule imprint, although he could obtain a power, it meant that he had to manage Thunder City for free. The Thunder Rule imprint had depreciated too much and wasn't as valuable as before. In the past, when he obtained the Thunder Rule imprint, not only did he obtain the power of the Thunder Rule imprint, but he also obtained a city's tax. This was the main source of income for many law incarnations. Ning Shu took the Thunder Rule imprint and prepared to fuse with it in the world of reincarnation. The system space was too small and wasn't big enough. He also needed to ask Shu Jun for some soul energy. He didn't know if he had collected any recently. This was to prevent his soul from being destroyed by the Thunder Rule imprint. Ning Shu said to Little Mouse, who was floating in the water, "I have something to do. I will leave first. You stay in the system space and don't tear books anymore." Little Mouse stared blankly. That was a look of hopelessness in its eyes. It was crying piteously for food. "I am hungry." Ning Shu was speechless. He shouldn't have followed them to watch the fun. Now, Little Rat couldn't forget the 3 energy bodies, and he was crazily thinking about them. However, he really couldn't get his hands on those 3 energy bodies. If it was someone else, Ning Shu might go up and discuss it. However, the grand uncle, besides, he didn't know how much it would cost to get those 3 energy bodies. Was it just for the Little Mouse to eat? Chapter 35-36. 200,000 merit points made Ning Shu's heart ache. 200,000 merit points could buy 2 or 3 of them. Moreover, they were of the earth attribute. Normally, there were more earth and water attributes. This was the foundation of a living world. Soil and water gave birth to life. Now that the earth attribute world origin was so expensive, the other things would definitely be expensive. The Little Mouse straightened its body and touched Ning Shu's ear with its claws. It begged, "Buy it, buy it. After eating it, we will go to the void to find treasures." Ning Shu's ear was tickled by the Little Mouse's touch. He tilted his head and said, "Don't touch me." The Little Mouse nodded and stared at Ning Shu with its watery eyes. Its mustache trembled. Ning Shu could only say, "Then give me the soil." Si Tian nodded and was a little surprised. He didn't expect this pet to eat the world origin. This was not eating, it was eating merit points. Ning Shu expressed that something like the world's origin was the worst choice. What Lu Li ate was plains. Eating plains was like drinking water, and it was not enough. It ate energy bodies. Ning Shu couldn't imagine how many energy bodies were eaten by the Little Mouse. Just thinking about it made his heart ache. He couldn't think about it. Si Tian passed the box to Ning Shu. The box was filled with palm-sized mud. The color was very dark and it was heavy in his hand. The little mouse's eyes landed on the box. Its saliva flowed out uncontrollably and dripped onto Ning Shu's shoulder. Ning Shu really wanted to pinch it to death. Could it have some image outside? Ning Shu passed the mud to the little mouse. The little mouse hugged the mud with its 2 claws and sat on Ning Shu's shoulder. It started to eat the mud. Si Tian asked, "City Lord, do you want to look at other things? Or if you have any treasures that you don't need, you can sell them at the auction." Si Tian squinted his eyes. Ning Shu waved his hand. "No, let's talk about it next time." She wanted to go to the void to look for treasures. The treasures in the auction house were not as good as those in the void. Si Tian did not force him. He looked at the little mouse, who was chewing on the soil, and felt that his teeth were a little uncomfortable, especially when he heard the sound of it chewing. Ning Shu walked out of the auction house and decided to take a stroll in the restaurant. The little mouse was eating so happily that she felt like eating something. After entering the restaurant, there weren't many guests in the hall. There were only a few scattered tables. This was also within Ning Shu's expectations. After all, the current spatial city could only be regarded as a commercial city. It was no longer the same as before. Ning Shu placed the little mouse on the table. The little mouse was still gnawing on the mud. After gnawing for a while, the mud did not reduce much. Although the mud was not big, it contained a lot of energy. Even the little mouse couldn't swallow it in one gulp. A world's origin should be able to allow the little mouse to persist for a while. "City Lord, let's go upstairs and take a look." When the shopkeeper saw Ning Shu, he immediately walked over and said to her. Ning Shu raised her eyebrows and asked, "What happened?" "Something happened to the person the city lord placed here," the shopkeeper said. "A person? Who? Who did she let go?" Ning Shu followed the shopkeeper downstairs. When she pushed open the door, she smelled a scent. It was a handsome man, but his arm was gone. When Ning Shu saw his face, she remembered the puppet. She had asked the puppet to watch over Water Branch City to prevent any riots. However, what was going on with his arm? The wound on his arm looked like it was made of flesh and blood, but it was pale and did not bleed. Ning Shu asked in surprise, "What's wrong? How did it end up like this?" The shopkeeper said, "Water Branch City looks calm, but there are still waves. He was the one who dealt with it. Now it's like this." Ning Shu did not expect the puppet to put in so much effort to complete the task. Ning Shu asked, "Do you feel pain?" The puppet shook his head. "No." Ning Shu sighed. "Then you want to go back with me?" The puppet nodded obediently. He would do whatever Ning Shu said. Not in the mood to eat, Ning Shu took the puppet and Housie back to the system space. "Take off your clothes. Let me see the wounds on your body," Ning Shu said. There were scars on his face and neck. There should be more on his body. The puppet obediently took off his clothes. However, it was not very convenient for him to take off his clothes because he was missing an arm. Ning Shu helped him take off his clothes. Sure enough, there were scars of all sizes on his body. Some were even cut open by a knife. There were so many scars on his flawless skin. Ning Shu asked, "Why didn't you inform me?" The puppet said, "After my analysis, I can handle it. You don't have to do anything." Ning Shu was speechless. "Okay." Ning Shu looked at his broken arm and asked, "Can your body be repaired?" The puppet's eyes blinked. "I don't think so. With the extent of my injuries, I should be destroyed." Speaking of his destruction, the puppet was emotionless. He was analyzing it rationally. "Tell me, can it be repaired?" After all, he was working for her. Since he was in such a state, it was better to repair it. However, even if he repaired it, he would still work for her. Ning Shu was not sure if the puppet was willing to repair it. "Do you want to repair it?" Ning Shu asked. The puppet did not respond immediately. Clearly, he was analyzing it. After a while, the puppet said, "It's not worth it to repair it. I can use the money to buy another puppet." Sigh, it was quite sad for the puppet to say that. "So it can be repaired?" Ning Shu asked, "Can you contact Uncle?" The puppet replied, "Yes." Ning Shu helped him put on his clothes. His whole body was covered with wounds, which made people feel guilty when they saw him. Ning Shu was indeed looking for a place to settle the puppet. The puppet was like an intelligent robot, resolutely carrying out her orders. What can I say about this?" Ning Shu opened the chat system and contacted Uncle, saying that he wanted to repair the puppet. Uncle was a little surprised. "It's worn out already." Ning Shu was speechless. Ning Shu didn't know why, but she felt that there was a hidden meaning behind those words. Ning Shu skipped the topic to prevent herself from thinking too much about Uncle's words. She only asked about the price of the repair. Previously, she had thought that the puppet was a troublesome thing. Now that she thought about it, there had to be a place for the puppet. Uncle said, "It can be repaired, but this thing is delicate. Some small damages are not easy to repair. The price is based on the number of wounds." "How much did each wound cost?" "Different wounds cost different amounts of money." Ning Shu silently looked at the wounds on the puppet's body. There were many big and small wounds. It was even missing an arm. This should be a serious injury. It seemed that the puppet's analysis was correct. It was not worth repairing. Ning Shu still decided to repair it. She actually had some money. It was a reward from when the world of reincarnation connected to the life plane, /BK. Chapter 35-37. Ning Shu still decided to repair the doll. Besides, the doll was already familiar with the job, so it might not be suitable to replace it with someone else. The chatting system scanned the doll and sent his image over. Ning Shu was already mentally prepared that it would cost a lot of money. Uncle Zhang replied, "Is this the doll I gave you?" "It's not a doll. It's trash." "How long has it been?" "You actually tortured the doll like this. You don't think that the doll won't hurt. Besides, this is my perfect creation. I'm very unhappy that you don't cherish it." Ning Shu thought he pretended not to understand what Uncle Zhang was saying. "Anyway, I didn't do anything indescribable. I didn't do that to the doll. How could she do that to a robot? She would torture a real person." Ning Shu asked, "How much does it cost?" Uncle Zhang said, "Wait, it's very serious. I need to check it." Ning Shu glanced at the doll. It was expressionless. Although it was very handsome and perfect, it didn't give off any life. No matter how beautiful it was, it still gave off a plastic feeling. After a long while, Uncle Zhang said, "Are you sure you want to repair it? It's very expensive. If you really need it and can't leave the doll, I can give you a new one and add some new functions." Ning Shu thought this old dirty turtle. Ning Shu didn't want to talk to Uncle Zhang. A wretched aura hit him in the face. In terms of wretchedness, even the man in the Cheongsam couldn't compare to Uncle Zhang. Ning Shu couldn't help but think of her eldest uncle making puppets, and she let out a wretched laugh. He was thinking too much. Ning Shu felt that all the dolls made by Uncle Zhang gave off an indescribable wretchedness. Even if it was the current doll. "Ning Shu, how much did you say?" Ning Shu didn't even know where the topic was going. She guessed that her uncle was probably discussing what new features to add now. He couldn't bear to watch. Ning Shu was suddenly curious about the sales of Uncle Zhang's dolls, but he didn't want to ask. If he did, the conversation would probably develop into an indescribable discovery. "Uncle Zhang, About 80 million merit points. Ning Shu clutched his chest. 80 million merit points. It probably wouldn't even cost that much to make a doll, but it would cost so much to repair it. After careful consideration, it was still not worth it. Ning Shu's heart wavered. He said to the doll, "Do you have a record of the people who cause trouble? Do you have their contact information? If you don't, it's fine. At least you know their names." When one party was in trouble, help would come from all sides. 80 million Ning Shu decided to crowdfund. These scars were caused by those people. Shouldn't they be compensated? Shouldn't they be compensated for the mental damage? If he knew who these troublemakers were, Ning Shu could find them one by one. The doll nodded and said, "I know. Although I don't know the name, I recorded it." Ning Shu was speechless. GJB. Is this a dashcam? As long as they had this thing, there was no need to worry that they wouldn't be able to find him. "Give me the video. You can go back to the factory to fix it." She wanted to start raising money. They caused trouble at her place and hurt her people. She couldn't do it without compensation. The doll said, "You want to fix me? That's not a wise choice." The doll would only choose the better option. Ning Shu waved her hand and said, "It's fine. It's not like you're using my money." The doll didn't say anything else. Ning Shu sent the doll away and started looking at the video. She looked at the troublemakers. The doll's eyes had a recording function. The doll had recorded almost everyone who was causing trouble, especially their faces. Everyone had a positive face at some point. Although the doll didn't have emotions, her AI analysis was comprehensive. She was even more meticulous than the humans. What she lacked was creativity and imagination. However, Ning Shu didn't know any of the people who recorded the video. There were so many mission enforcers. How could she know many people? What was the use of knowing the person but not the name or contact information? She needed someone with a wide network. Yes, she thought of the Chongsam man. Ning Shu took the video and went to find the Chongsam man. As soon as she entered the restaurant, Ning Shu saw the Chongsam man talking to a girl again. The Chongsam man was waving a fan back and forth. He was flirtatious and pretentious. Ning Shu didn't go over. Instead, she sat at the next table and ordered tea and pastries. She watched and listened quietly. The Chongsam man saw Ning Shu. He said a few words to the girl and sent her away. He sat down, poured a cup of tea, and asked, "Why are you looking for me again? Can't I look for you if there's nothing?" The Chongsam man snorted. "I don't see you usually. You must have something to say when you appear." Ning Shu praised him. "You're very smart. It's time to test your strength." Ning Shu took out the video. "Help me see if there's anyone you know. If you do, give me their names and contact information. I need to be kind to them." She wanted to force them to donate. She had to know someone. Since it was a fight, she had to know them. "Very good, very good." The Chongsam man raised his eyebrows. "What do you want now?" The Chongsam man started to watch the video and roughly understood what Ning Shu wanted to do. He started to look at the information and listed a few names. There were so many videos, but the Chongsam man actually knew more than half of them. It was enough to show how wide the Chongsam man's social circle was. The Chongsam man was called a social butterfly. This made Ning Shu feel a little ashamed of her inferiority. How could he know so many people? She was probably a little autistic. Ning Shu said to the Chongsam man, "Help me send a message to these people and ask them to gather here. I have something to say to them." The Chongsam man raised his eyebrows. "At least let me know the ins and outs of the matter." Ning Shu told him the ins and outs of the matter. Then, she spread her hands and said, "Do you think I should ask for some compensation?" The Cheongsam man was speechless. He seemed to have nothing to say. The Cheongsam man said, actually, everyone solves their conflicts in private. Usually, it's in the system space. There's no way to meet at all. They can only come to these places. Ning Shu said, you can also go to the void. The Cheongsam man rolled his eyes. Not everyone can go to the void. Usually, it won't be too big of a deal. Although it's not allowed to fight, sometimes when there's a problem in the mediation between the two sides, they will still fight. There will always be conflicts when people get along with each other. Don't you want to solve them? Ning Shu shrugged. It doesn't matter if they solve their conflicts, but the problem is that they hurt my people. I have to compensate them. How can I repair the puppets without money? They're just unlucky. It's okay if they don't catch me, but if they do, they can only admit defeat. /BK Chapter 35-38 The Importance of Surveillance. The man in the Cheongsam contacted his acquaintances and asked them to call the people who had conflicts with them over. The 3-inch world. The man in the Cheongsam kept sending messages. Many people had sent her messages. Ning Shu was drinking tea and eating snacks, which made the man in the Cheongsam roll his eyes. Whose business was this? Why was he so busy and working for nothing? Ning Shu observed his expression and poured a cup of tea for the man in the Cheongsam. He said, thank you for your hard work. The man in the Cheongsam was speechless. A cup of tea? So what was he so busy doing? It was killing him. The man in the Cheongsam was busy for a while. After finishing a cup of tea, he said to Ning Shu, let me tell you a piece of news. Ning Shu looked at him. Don't tell me that these people are ignoring me and don't plan to come at all. The man in the Cheongsam said. You're right. Ning Shu knew this would be the result. It would be abnormal if these people rushed over as soon as she called them. She was a nobody and had no prestige in the organization. It was normal for them to ignore her. Ning Shu was not in a hurry. He said to the man in the Cheongsam, tell them that they don't want to come because it's too troublesome. But I have to send these videos to the organization. As for what kind of punishment the organization will give, I don't know. My patience is limited. I'll hand them the videos if they wait too long. Anyway, Ning Shu and the others had threatened them openly. If they don't come, I'll complain. The man in the Cheongsam looked at Ning Shu and said after a long time, you're so insidious. What do you mean insidious? This is an open conspiracy. I'm forcing you to come. If you don't come, do as you see fit. The man in the Cheongsam sent Ning Shu's message. Then the two of them began to eat and drink while waiting for people to come. The man in the Cheongsam suddenly realized something. That's not right. Why is it in my restaurant again? Don't you also have a restaurant? Why don't you do it in your own restaurant? Would they fight again later? The man in the Cheongsam felt that his restaurant was really a sin. So many accidents happened in his restaurant. Who was going to pay for the damage and affect his business? Ning Shu poured him a cup of tea. Your restaurant is famous. Others will definitely be able to find it. Bullshit, all the law cities have the same layout, so how could we not find it? The Cheongsam man scoffed. If I lose tables, chairs, bowls, chopsticks, and cups, you have to compensate me. I'm so poor now. Ning Shu comforted him, don't worry, I won't do anything. I'm not such a violent person. I like to be reasonable. Cheongsam man, ha 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 ha. While they were eating and chatting, more and more people arrived. When they saw the man in the Cheongsam, they walked over and asked, Zhu Li, why are you looking for us? Ning Shu. Why are you playing dumb? The man in the Cheongsam didn't say anything else. He just said, wait. When everyone is here, you can order whatever you want to eat. Since they were here, he would at least have some business. Living in poverty, one had to be calculative. Some familiar people sat at the same table and began whispering to each other. Of course, there were also people who were at odds with each other. They hated each other, and it hurt their eyes to look at each other. Soon, the entire restaurant's hall was filled with people. Ning Shu glanced at these people. They had more or less added wounds to the dolls. Ning Shu coughed, but no one paid her any attention. Ning Shu slammed the table hard. With a bang, she finally succeeded in attracting everyone's attention. Ning Shu said, "You should know why I called you here, right?" "I don't know," the crowd responded sparsely. Ning Shu raised her eyebrows. She didn't have as many connections as the old mission enforcers like the man in the Cheongsam. She was dignified, so people would at least give her some face. It was normal for people to not give her face as she was a nameless mission enforcer. Ning Shu wasn't here to get close to these people. Besides, she still had something on these people. There was no need to be polite. Ning Shu threw out a bill and said to these people, "You guys gather the money and this matter is over. I won't hand it over to the organization." The people present looked at Ning Shu and then looked at the bill. Suddenly, there was an uproar. 80 million. Why don't you rob someone? You're here to scam us. 80 million merit days. In your dreams. Do whatever you want. Report it to the organization. They thought that they had something on them. They wanted money, and it was still 8 million. They wanted to repair a doll and asked them for money. Some people quietly asked the people next to them what a doll was. In short, no matter what these people were thinking, these people who had conflicts and had fought before were united for the first time. They were so telepathic that they didn't agree. After a rough calculation, he realized that there were more than 100 people in the restaurant. 80 million meant that each person could pay 800,000 merit points. 800,000 merit points was a sky-high number, especially for mission enforcers who were slightly weaker. 800,000 merit points was a lot. Even if it wasn't 800,000, it was 600,000 or 700,000. It was too much. Ning Shu listened quietly to these people. She put on a professional fake smile and said, 700,000. When the judge comes, the minimum penalty is 1 million. Especially since everyone is a super mission enforcer. The penalty will definitely be higher. Of course, it's also possible that someone will be obliterated. There are so many people causing trouble, and this is only one law city. There are so many other cities. Someone has to be sacrificed as an example. Ning Shu smiled and pointed at a person. Will you be obliterated? Or you? Ning Shu pointed at another person. Or you. Everyone who Ning Shu pointed at avoided her gaze. There was silence. Many people looked at Ning Shu with unfriendly eyes. Ning Shu didn't care at all. Since he was holding on to someone's weakness, he had to be aware that he would be hated. It doesn't matter anymore. Thud. It was good to collect the 80 million yuan. This was the medical fee for saving a life. When the Hope doll returned, it was already a complete doll. Ning Shu said, "I'll give you time to think about it. Give me an answer after you've thought about it. But you have to think about it here. You can't leave the restaurant." The Cheongsam man was speechless. Did he still want to do business? Why was his restaurant so miserable? Life was really cruel to this little cutie. Oh, the Water City Lord still wants to detain us. Don't we need to do the quest? Do we have to report your actions to the organization and say that you're detaining people and affecting our mission? Ning Shu said unhurriedly, "I am the lord of a city. Since you have committed a crime, I have the right to admonish you. Did I detain you? No, I'm just trying to brainwash you. /BK Chapter 35-39 Ning Shu's shameless words successfully silenced the people present. Please look at the most complete. What a shameless person. She had never seen such a shameless person before. Ning Shu's face was not red, and he said, I'm doing this for your own good. Although I'm a little long-winded and wasted a little time, the stability and prosperity of the city needs every task taker to pay attention to. Sigh, she's really trying her best to persuade us. Can you people understand her good intentions? Hurry up and give the 80 million. Hee, the Water City Lord is so arrogant. Do you think you can deal with so many people? Her strength is mediocre. There are many strong people among the task takers. Do you know XXX? The tone of the person with a backer was still very tough, indicating that if she didn't let her go, she would have to bear the consequences. With so many people, could she handle it alone? Everyone had more or less connections. If these connections were extended, it was not something the Water City Lord could deal with. Ning Shu raised his eyebrows. XXX, sorry, I don't know. I also know that there are many strong people. Is XXX your backer? Ning Shu suddenly became excited. It's good to have a backer. It's best to call the backer and let me see the strong people. The higher the level of the person, the happier the judge will be. When the time comes, it's not something that can be solved with 7 or 800,000. The judge would punish them hard. The higher the level and the stronger the person, the more resources they have in their hands. They would not be lenient in punishing them. As long as these people called their backers, Ning Shu would immediately call the judge to punish them. It would be a waste not to use them. Justice would fall from the sky. As for her role, it was nothing more than a weak and cowardly city lord. She tried her best to persuade these people not to make trouble, but she was suppressed to the point where she couldn't raise her head. She was called to the backer by these people. She had no choice but to compromise. There was no way to solve it, so she had to call the judge. At most, the hat of incompetence was put on her head. She was just a little pitiful, weak, pitiful, and helpless. Therefore, no matter how much trouble these people caused, Ning Shu was able to stay out of it. If the judge came, her 80 million would probably be blown away. Now it was a gamble whether she would admit defeat or the other party would admit defeat. Whether she could get 80 million or not, at least she would be able to vent her anger. If they were to fork out 7 or 800,000 yuan for her, they would definitely feel suffocated and upset. But if the judge came, these people would also be taught a lesson and judged. Ning Shu calmly sat on the fishing platform. Who asked her to be in the right? She was also the city lord who maintained the stability of the city. Even if he wasn't in the right, he would still be strong. Not to mention, Ning Shu was in the right now. Ning Shu smiled and said, everyone, think about it carefully. I'll wait for your decision. This is my account number. Once you've decided, transfer the money to my account. Damn, he's really arrogant. Everyone present looked at Ning Shu and gritted their teeth. Each and every one of them wanted to rush over and beat up Ning Shu. The Cheongsam man watched from the side, afraid that there would be a riot. These people would not be able to control themselves and rushed towards Ning Shu to beat him up. The man in the Cheongsam began to ease the atmosphere. He tried to be a good person and said, aren't we discussing something? Everyone, please calm down. The Water City Lord's puppet is broken. It's inevitable that she's in a bad mood. It has something to do with you if the puppet is broken. Not to mention, the Water City Lord has the responsibility to protect the city. Even if she's an ordinary person, she should compensate for the broken things. Don't you think so? As soon as the Cheongsam man finished speaking, someone questioned, it costs so much to repair a puppet. She's crazy about money. Yes, she's holding other people's weakness and being unscrupulous. 7 or 800,000 yuan would definitely be painful to take out, and it was such an inexplicable thing. Compensation was possible, but not so much. He didn't have the money to repair it and wanted to extort. Ning Shu was not in a hurry. He was calm and not angry at all. After all, a winner had to have the courage of a winner. I didn't set the price. You should ask uncle why it's so expensive, Ning Shu said. She's going too far, let's fight it out with her. These people gave each other a look. They would beat this guy up and then disperse in a hubbub. No, it was better not to fight. After all, she was the city lord. As for the video in her hands, they might as well just snatch it. They were all super mission enforcers. They had the means and the courage to do so. Without the video, even if she wanted to complain and make a statement, it would be useless without evidence and information. Now, she could threaten people so calmly because she had the video in her hands. Without it, she was a tiger with teeth. There was nothing to be afraid of. Ning Shu saw these people slowly approaching and surrounding her and the Cheongsam man. They looked like they were going to fight. It was not that they wanted to fight, but they looked at the video on the table and wanted to snatch it away. Naive. The Cheongsam man's face did not look good. What did these people mean? Did they want to fight in his restaurant? Was his restaurant going to suffer again? Ning Shu snorted and said indifferently, "What? You want to fight? As long as you give us the video, this matter will be over. In the future, we will not cause trouble in Water City and resolve this matter peacefully." Tisk, tsk, tsk. Listen to this tone. It even sounds like charity. Not causing trouble in Water City is the biggest concession. Ioyo. Ning Shu put his hand on the video. The video is here. Come and snatch it. By the way, with so many of you causing trouble, it should be considered a riot. When the time comes, not only will the judges come, maybe even the army will come. When the time comes, there will be a barrage of gunfire. I can't predict how many casualties will be. They were so unscrupulous because Ning Shu had always been in the right. It was reasonable. These people's actions were wrong again and again. The atmosphere was a little stagnant. These people looked at each other and did not dare to snatch the video because they were not sure if Ning Shu had informed the judges that there was a riot here. If there was a riot, it must be suppressed. Even if it was a super mission enforcer, it was nothing to the organization. I'm not as calculative as a woman. Insidious and cunning. The most poisonous thing is a woman's heart. These people had no choice but to use their poisonous tongues to complain about Ning Shu. Ning Shu drank his tea calmly and complained casually. He handed over the money. 700 to 800,000 merit points. I'll let you have your fill. I'll forgive you for your useless actions. Some people decided to leave first. There was no point in staying here. They might as well go out and think of a way. For the sake of their own money, everyone was going all out. However, when they reached the entrance of the restaurant, they were bounced back by the barrier. A barrier was set up. They all glared angrily at Ning Shu. Too sinister, /BK. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.